Welcome to the September 5th School Board meeting. This meeting is now in session. We are happy to have our Career Center Air Force JROTC cadets back with us tonight. Please rise as they present the colors.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Order, colors, center, base, forward, arch.
Thank you. You may be seated. Tonight, we have 3 recognitions. First, Mr. Paul Ferguson, Clerk of the Court for Arlington County, will swear in Ms. Cynthia Johnson as the Interim Superintendent of Arlington Public Schools.
Quite an honor.
It's exciting.
Thank you, Madam Chair. It's quite an honor to be able to administer the oath to Ms. Johnson. She has been a go-to person in our community for a long time. She's done just about it all. I personally remember her when I lived in Arlington. She was the principal of Abingdon School, and all of a sudden when she was the principal, everybody wanted to go there because, of course, there's choices, and whether there's a difficult issue, task force or something over the years, you've just been the problem solver. So it's nice to have a known leader at the helm of our school system, and congratulations to the school board for your excellent choice. That's not coming from me, it's just what I hear from everybody out there. What a great choice that all of you have made. Ms. Johnson, would you please stand and raise your right hand? Do you, Cynthia Johnson, solemnly swear or affirm that you will uphold the Constitution of the United States and the Constitution of the Commonwealth of Virginia, and you will faithfully and impartially discharge all the duties incumbent upon you as the interim superintendent for the Arlington County Schools for the school year 2019 and 2020 according to the best of your ability? Congratulations. I just need you to sign this form.
May I hug you, Paul?
Thank you. Yes,
Can I hug you?
What? Oh, yeah, hug. I'll take a hug. Thank you. Congrats.
Thank you so much.
Congratulations, Ms. Johnson. We look forward to working with you this school year. Would you like a picture? I know we took one, I think, when we appointed you, but we're all in different attire tonight. Okay. We're going to do it back here. So for Ms. Van Doren. So if that's okay, yes.
Can I stand in the back? Yes. Okay. Thank you. Thank you. I'll stand right here.
Thank you, Mr. Ferguson. I really appreciate you being here this evening to do this honor for us. Next, we will recognize some members of our outstanding staff. First, Mr. Goldstein will recognize Mrs. Jamie Peterson from Jamestown Elementary School.
Hi, good evening. So first I'd like to invite Mrs. Jamie Peterson to join me at the podium. Jamie ended the school year as Jamie Sapp, but is beginning the new school year as Jamie Peterson. So congratulations.
Thank you so much.
So one of our strategic plan goals is to support our students' well-being by providing a healthy, safe, and supported learning environment. Achieving that goal is possible because of our highly qualified, dedicated, and sometimes heroic staff, and Mrs. Peterson's an exceptional example of this. Last June, Mrs. Peterson's class was at lunch when a piece of food lodged in the throat of one of her students, completely blocking his airway. The student displayed the universal distress signal for choking. Who knows the universal distress signal for choking? Does everybody know it? Good. And luckily, his classmates acted in unison and summoned Ms. Peterson. She was able to stop his choking by applying the Heimlich maneuver. We won't demonstrate that right now. and back blows until the food was dislodged. Thanks to her quick thinking and decisive action, the student recovered and is fine. He and his family are here to celebrate her with us. Are they here this evening? Could you, did you come here with your parents? Yeah. Could you invite them to come up here with us? And also joining in the celebration tonight is Jamestown Principal Michelle McCarthy. Michelle, could you come up here also? Thank you. And finally, I am pleased to introduce Arlington County firefighter and EMT Jamie Jill, who is here to help us recognize this heroic act. Mr. Jill, would you like to make some comments?
Good evening. I'm Jamie Jill. I'm the team lead for our Hands to Hearts program. It's a collaboration with VHC. We go out and teach community members CPR, hands-only CPR. And I was super excited when they asked me to say a couple words tonight because teachers are actually my hero. Firefighters are a lot of children's heroes, and teachers are actually my hero. I think what they do on a day-to-day basis is amazing. I have a young daughter, and I feel like they should be appreciated and recognized more often. So let's do a big hand for teachers. So if you ask Ms. Peterson, she probably will tell you I did what anyone else would do, right? It's not the case, unfortunately. A lot of times when something like this happens, even though people have training or know what to do, they either don't feel comfortable, they're afraid to act, or they just freeze. So what she did so quickly and without hesitation is truly heroic. And she deserves all the recognition in the world for what she did. And not only did she save a life, she's also caused conversation for us to get into the schools. We're now going to be going to PTA meetings because parents are very concerned now. So they want to know what to do because a lot of parents don't know what to do in that situation. So she's also hopefully helping save future lives in situations like this. So thank you very much, Jamie. Appreciate it.
So before we do the picture, let me just wrap up. It's all right. So Shakespeare said, some are born to greatness, others achieve greatness in their lifetime, and still others have greatness thrust upon them. And that is certainly the case here. And so, again, I want to offer all of our congratulations to Jamie Peterson, and thank you so much for what you did. All right.
Yeah, I'm up.
Thank you again, Mrs. Peterson, for your heroic effort. And for our final recognition, Ms. O'Grady will congratulate on our behalf Swanson teacher Mary Beth Donnelly, who was selected as the 2019 Virginia History Teacher of the Year.
Amazing. As Chair Talento said, I am very happy to present the next recognition, and I invite Swanson Middle School teacher Mary Beth Donnelly to join me here at the podium. Good to see you. Thank you. Yeah. Okay. So why don't you stand over here where everyone can see you as I say nice things about you. Okay, our previous recognition focused on the important role our staff plays in keeping our students healthy and safe. In addition, we know we can credit much of our students' success to our diverse and highly qualified workforce. It is their leadership and focus on student learning that results in their exemplary education. Having said that, it is an honor to recognize Ms. Donnelly tonight for being named the 2019 Virginia History Teacher of the Year by the Gilder Lehrman Institute of American History. That's pretty impressive, right? Yeah. This award highlights the crucial importance of history education and honors exemplary American history teachers throughout the United States, from elementary school all the way through high school. Now, we're pleased to congratulate Ms. Donnelly on receiving this honor. Not only did she receive an honorarium for this award, but Swanson Middle School also received an assortment of American history books and educational materials that will enhance student learning. I also want to acknowledge and thank Carrie Hirsch, our social studies supervisor, and Eric Underhill, assistant principal at Swanson, for being here tonight to help recognize Ms. Donnelly, and I want to thank them and ask them to join us as well. Come on this side. Excellent. That's okay. All right. All right, thank you guys. And Ms. Donnelly, thank you for your dedication to the teaching profession, and congratulations on your special award. And we have a certificate to give you in honor of your accomplishment. Thank you. Yeah, thank you. And I'd love to invite my colleagues down, those of you who can make it down here, to take a photo with us. Here we go. You guys want to move over just a little bit? Yeah.
Congratulations again, Ms. Donnelly. We are now at announcements. On September 10th, the board will hold a committee of the whole meeting at 5:30 p.m. in the school board conference room. On September 17th, we will have a closed meeting at 5 p.m. in the school board conference room. And on September 18th, board members will join our advisory council on instruction for a reception and their first meeting of the year beginning at 6:30 p.m. here in the boardroom. I also want to take this opportunity to provide an update on our RFP process for the superintendent search. On July 30th, 2019, we appointed Ms. Cynthia Johnson as interim superintendent effective September 1st. And as we have already noted, this is our first school board meeting with her in her new role. Congratulations again, and we are really looking forward to working with you this coming school year. As we mentioned in a prior update, we have directed our staff to initiate an RFP to hire, an RFP is a request for proposal, to hire an executive search firm to aid us with a national search for a new superintendent. The RFP was published in mid-August, and proposals are due on September 9th. After that date, we will start our review of proposals and then proceed with initiating interviews of the search firms. We hope to have a search firm hired later this fall. Once the search firm is in place, we expect the process of hiring a new superintendent will take several months, and that it will include input from staff, families, and the community. The goal will be to select a new superintendent this spring 2020, and we will continue to share details about our timeline, ways to engage, and other updates on the Engage with APS webpage as information becomes available. Board members, do you have any announcements? Okay. Okay. Any other announcements? Okay, Mr. Goldstein, take your time. I tried to buy you some time.
Yeah, thank you. I'm
Sorry.
having trouble finding my announcements. At New Directions, the substance abuse counselor, Dr. Mila Mascones, was interviewed last week on ABC 7 and talked about the dangers of the electronic cigarettes and vaping. And that interview is available, and I believe it's on the APS website, and you can find it there. At Kenmore, they welcomed 1,000 students earlier this week, which is more than they've ever had in the past since the beginning of the new school era. I believe that was 14 years ago. And the PTA is planning a 5K on Saturday, November 2nd. I'll continue with more announcements as soon as I find the rest. Okay. All right, thank you.
I'll provide you an opportunity after our superintendent's announcements. So we are now at the interim superintendent announcements and updates. Ms. Johnson?
Good evening, school board. I want to welcome back each and every family and student to the new school year. Quiero dar la bienvenida a cada estudiante y familia en el año nuevo escolar. So welcome back. It's been very exciting so far this week, and I'm truly energized. Our students are back, and we're looking forward to a great year. Tonight, I just want to share a few brief updates, followed by a report on our enrollment, and then there'll be a video highlight of the first day. So as we start the new school year, I want to remind everyone that APS is a safe space and a second home for our students. We are committed to ensuring all students are safe, they're secure, and feel welcome. And they feel included, and they feel valued. Their safety is our #1 priority because we know that when children feel safe, they can focus on learning. Safety is a countywide effort, and every one of us plays a part. We greatly appreciate the community's support, especially this year as we open new schools and adjust new traffic patterns in many areas. And so we've taken several new safety measures, and they include a new visitor management system that's been activated in each and every school. We have a very strong partnership with the Arlington County Police Department, and that is designed to promote school safety and road safety, and also to develop positive relationships with our students. We have the county support to implement infrastructure, crosswalks, and signal changes around our schools that are designed to improve traffic and pedestrian safety. We also have community walks in the neighborhood, and that's designed to help families plan accordingly. And we have ongoing emergency management planning, training, and outreach to ensure our staff, students, and families keep safety at the forefront. We're going to continue this practice throughout the year because it is a priority. So another measure related to safety is our new annual online verification process, which officially launched on August the 26th. We are very proud of our progress, and that's the progress we've made to date. And we want to take a few moments to share that information. This process replaces the printed first day packet. We are now verifying information for each student through the parent view. That's the online process to improve accuracy, and because it allows families to efficiently review and submit changes to their information. And I'm actually very pleased to report that to date, a total of 12,870 families have already completed the online verification process, which represents 46% of our families. And this is significant, and it represents every level. And we do, in fact, have 18 schools that have completed the process for 45% of the families based on their enrollment. This is truly great news. In the 2 weeks we've been in schools, and families actually have until October the 31st to complete the process. We know that this is a significant change, and we want to thank all of our families for their patience and cooperation. I also want to recognize staff for all of their efforts, central office staff, school-based staff, including principals, registrars, ITCs, bilingual family liaison, other staff members, and counselors, because they played a very important part in this process, which to date seems pretty seamless. They've done this by providing extensive staff and registrar training, by making online tutorial and videos available in English and Spanish, by providing kiosks and trained support at every school. There's been multiple sessions in our schools that walk families through the process. There have been individuals who have attended open house, and there will also be staff available at back to school night. And we're making free and reduced meal applications available online in paper upon request. So all of these efforts and more have been beneficial to this process, and they're actually going to continue through October. I forgot I was supposed to be clicking, right? So I want to now share that a lot of school activities are underway, and we want to invite parents to mark their calendar for back-to-school nights, which you can see right here on this slide. These are important opportunities so that individuals can meet the teachers, discuss the year ahead, and then what the student goals are. So back-to-school nights for the new year will be held starting next Wednesday, September the 11th, and they'll continue through October the 10th. So here are the dates, and they're also available on the website. And we want to thank School and Community Relations for all of the reminders and all of the communication. In addition to our back-to-school night, we are also looking forward to many ribbon-cutting events, and that's to celebrate our new schools this fall. APS invites the school board, community members, county officials, civic associations, staff, students, and families to join us for these events. It takes many hands to open 5 new schools, and these events are both a celebration and a thank you. A thank you to many staff, families, and community partners who support our schools. We just completed our first of 5 events, and that was the official opening of the new Montessori Public School of Arlington, the first standalone Montessori public school in Virginia. The next dates are listed here on the slide, and the Department of School and Community Relations will in fact promote each event and share details in the weeks prior to the event. So the next event is the open house and dedication of the new Charles R. Drew Elementary School. That's going to be on September the 21st. APS will mark Drew's official opening as a standalone neighborhood school. And a lot of work has gone into making this possible, and we want to acknowledge the staff in the school and our community partners, as well as the school board members who have supported this school. This event will be held in conjunction with the community-wide Green Valley Day from 12 to 6 on September 21st. So please, everyone, come and join us. So our first day visit, there were many highlights, and really nothing compares to the excitement of the first day. I've said it before, and I'll say it again and again. It's all about students, students, students. So it really was a joy to see students arriving in our schools, seeing old friends, meeting their teachers, principal, and exploring their new schools. So I want to thank Mark Schwartz and all of our county partners for their support, and all the staff for their efforts to open 5 new schools and to get all of our schools ready for the opening day. I ended up starting at the bus depot very early in the morning when the buses were getting ready to roll out. We're pictured here at the Heights, where we welcomed the first students to a brand new school. And I managed, with the assistance and support of Julia Burgos, to visit 10 schools before noon on the first day. We visited pre-K yesterday, and I actually visited 2 schools today. So we're in full swing, and before I show you the highlights, I want to just share a few numbers. So what you see here are the first day enrollment of 27,996 students. That's 560 more students than last year's official September 30th count. Just to keep the community informed, the enrollment will continue to fluctuate, and then we'll have the final official enrollment that will occur on September the 30th. A lot of great work with the transportation services, and you have some good information on this slide that will help you if you need to follow up. So I actually met the drivers bright and early as they started their journey. The bus depot is where the action happens. We cannot thank our drivers and transportation services team enough. And that thank you is for their hard work and dedication. And here are just a few highlights that I want to share with you. We started the year with full staffing of drivers and bus attendants and 200 buses serving. Those 200 buses are serving a total of 154 assigned routes. APS received incredible support from Arlington County Police, the sheriff, and transportation leading up to the first day, and this was all the help we needed for the changes in traffic patterns and that there are other factors related to growth in our school system. We also implemented hub stops for Montessori Public School of Arlington and HB Woodlawn, and that's designed to reduce travel time. And last but not least, we are very excited about the new art transit pilot implemented with the school board support, and that's designed to explore options for HB, the Career Center, and New Direction students. We have received a lot of interest and will be monitoring student input on this as we explore transportation options for the future. As always, with new school year and many new schools and additional routes to cover, there are modifications that are needed and issues we need to address, and we will continue to address them. Staff are making those adjustments, and they are responding to the feedback that we're receiving from families, and this is to ensure that every student gets to school safely and on time. So a big thank you to all who are involved, and as I mentioned earlier, information is on the slide as well as our website on contacting the Transportation Call Center via email or phone if you need to have follow-up on any transportation-related matters. I want to take a moment to thank all of the departments for the staff work and the staff from each department for all the work that they have done to prepare for the new year, whether it was facilities, technology, hiring via HR, budgeting, planning, or important communication processes. It takes many hands to successfully open schools. So thanks to all the departments, and another example of many hands can be seen on our first day video. begin our new school year, there's a lot of excitement around Arlington this morning. We are excited to receive all of our students for the very first day. Our bus drivers are here, and oftentimes they're the first point of contact for all of our students.
I'm real excited to see my kids. They're the most important thing to me about this job. And I'm just ready to see them.
We have all our drivers and attendants here, all hands on deck to start school off. We're excited to get all of our students to and from school safely.
It was really good. It's very decent, no jump. Everybody was following the line. The family together, everybody is happy, which I'm happy to see everyone because I know everyone. That was good. That was good. That's the best today.
Oh man, this 3-day weekend was too long. I've been so excited to get back to see these kids. The staff has been fabulous here.
We've been really waiting for this day to have the kids, the family, the community here.
Yeah, we are really excited about the school the first day and back to routine.
Him leaving. We have an empty nest, but we have another little one, so our house is full kind of again. But we're excited he's here, and this used to be my elementary school, so I'm really excited that he gets to come to the same school that I was in.
The teachers are amazing. They're really excited to have the kids today, and so are we.
Really just meeting every kid with where they are and taking them where we think they need to go.
Excited for the new school, everybody. We wish you the best time, all the children, all the teachers, many blessings.
I'm excited about the 6th grade year starting, about the new school, Dorothy Ham, and I really don't know what it's going to be like.
The parents have come out to cheer and support kids and getting in the building, and that's been awesome. A lot of energy and a lot of enthusiasm. Ms. Johnson came over to walk kids to kind of talk to them and see how their walk was this morning. We've worked really hard to make sure everybody's safe, and so she was checking out some of the safety measures we've put into place to make sure they get here safely.
Today, with everything going on with all the walkers and everything else, it actually has been going very well with all the traffic and stuff. The public has slowed down. They're watching the crosswalk. The kids are obeying the traffic signals too. So I think for a first day, this has been really successful, and I think that the community really came together to make sure that our kids got to school safely.
I hope you have a wonderful first day. Have a great day.
Certainly for the drivers, recognize that school is starting again, right? We've had a whole summer where the kids have been off, and now everybody's back to school. We're going to have a lot of walkers, a lot of bicyclists, certainly the school buses. So just to make sure that they're aware that they're out there, and to slow down and be aware of crossings, and also to stop school buses.
We're excited to onboard over 700 new staff members. Of course, we have plenty of returning staff members, but I think Human Resources is excited to see all of the new instructional assistants, the new teachers, the new bus drivers, and everybody who's ready to get started for the year.
I think our students are really enjoying our new space, and they're seeing a lot of familiar faces and their teachers, and they're already hard at work in lessons in the classroom and taking advantage of our outdoor space and our newly discovered koi pond. So I think they're doing a great job on their first day of learning.
What I know about Arlington is the pride that people have in their school system, and we're excited because we have so many students here who are so excited to come and learn. We've got a lot of parents here who are excited to drop off their kindergartners. I dropped off my own kindergartner last week, so I'm excited to kind of see that process in other people's kids.
It's just been a fabulous first day. We've had staff and students just super excited, cheering our kids on as they entered the school building. And look what I just found, a note right after lunch from a parent saying, have a great first day of high school and a fantastic year. Love, Mom. Love it. This is what it's all about.
Feliz primer día de clases.
Woo!
Hi, boys and girls. How are you today?
It's a great first day of Fleet Elementary School. We have one of our specialized programs, our deaf and hard of hearing. Every student in there, all of our teachers can sign, and they do a cue and a sign so that they can communicate, and they're working on some of their early phonemic awareness and letter sounds so that they can become better readers. It's a dream fulfilled, as my sons told me this weekend. It's a great day for you, Dad. We're so excited. We're so proud of you. You've been talking about being a principal, so it's a great moment, and I feel especially honored to be the principal of Fleet Elementary School as we grow each and every year.
Welcome
for HB and Schreiber students. There was excitement at the Montessori Public School of Arlington. There was excitement at Swanson this morning and also at Claremont as parents came in to have breakfast, as some of them were dropping off their child for their first day of school ever.
What's up, new guys? Good to see you, new faces. How you feeling? You ready? Let's do it. Let's do it. Let's do it. Yeah. Well, to me, since I'm born and raised Arlingtonian, this is a great day for me. The kids get to come into this beautiful school that we've been working on for years now. They deserve it. They're hard workers. This is a new beginning. We've been down on Vacation Lane. Now we get to come up to the top part of town, celebrating Roslyn.
And I'm excited to be here with the interim superintendent, Cynthia Johnson. Always great to see all the smiling faces. Great weather, great school system, great county, great to be alive. Let's go, everybody. Yeah.
I knew that as soon as the students got off the bus and they saw all the Schreiber staff that they know and they've known for years, that they would be fine. And I am so proud of them. They came into this new building with staff that they know, and they're doing great. It's wonderful to be in this building and back with our HB Woodlawn friends. We're so excited for the new school year.
So I just want to take a moment to thank our video production team who are responsible for the wonderful video you just had a chance to view, but they are also responsible for a lot of the video productions we have throughout the year. So I want to acknowledge that and say thank you very much to that team. And So the last slide is really, as I visited schools on the first day, I was really inspired by the positive energy. And there was a lot of modeling already from day one for students. There was a lot of relationship building, and there was a lot of engagement right from the start. And I really want to keep that positivity going. On the first day, I also kicked off what I'm calling my 42 in 42 campaign. It's my commitment to make 42 visits to all programs in schools in the first 42 days. So during my initial visit, there were quotes, and I'm going to be looking out for this as I listened to students and I listened to adults. So 2 quotes stood out, and I'm going to share them with you. One student said, "I love learning from other students." And that is what 42 and 42 is all about, is that there are lots of ways to learn, not only from the adults in the classroom, but students make connections with each other. A staff member said, "The buildings come alive once the students are inside." And that is so true. Seeing the students in our schools and classroom is when the magic happens and the success stories begin. Our students are our gifts. I look forward to many more visits and opportunities to learn from our teachers, students, and staff. I wish everyone a great year and continued success. 42 in 42, I'm coming to see you.
Thank you very much, Ms. Johnson. We really appreciate that presentation. Excellent video. Before I open the floor to remarks and questions from my colleagues, I do want to allow Mr. Goldstein to finish his announcements, and then we'll come back to you for remarks and questions. And thank you again. That was excellent.
Thank you very much. Sorry, I had trouble finding this earlier. I want to go back to one of my liaison schools, Kenmore Middle School. WJLA, I think that's Channel 7, recently taped a feature story about inclusion with a Kenmore Special Olympian. The story will highlight the power of inclusion and the benefits of students with disabilities participating in activities with their non-disabled peers. And I mentioned that they are having a 5K in November. At Barcroft Elementary School, they are having a Chalk for Peace event on Saturday, September 28th from 9 to 11 a.m. This is a fun annual event that brings the school and the neighborhood community together to create works of art with chalk on the grounds around the school. And Barcroft is also having their International Night on Thursday, October 10th at 6:30 p.m., which is a great way to celebrate the rich diversity of cultures at Barcroft with food, exhibits, and musical performances. And finally, at Wakefield High School, last week, they learned that Wakefield was selected as an official Special Olympics National Banner Unified Champion School. Under the leadership of Juliana Araujo, Becky Keegan, and Danielle McKenzie, Wakefield was recognized for being leaders of social inclusion in Arlington County Public Schools. There are 173 schools across the nation to receive this national recognition for the 2019 cycle, with only 9 schools from across Virginia included in this 2019 class. So congratulations to all of those schools. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Goldstein. And as my new role in chair, I sometimes forget myself what I want to bring as announcements because I'm focusing on managing the agenda. And there's something very important that I want to share, so I apologize, Ms. Johnson, if you'll just bear with me one more moment. One thing that I was noting last week is that next week is the National Suicide Prevention Week. And I think it's really important just to remind our community that APS, on the APS website, there is a crisis hotline tab on the very front page that you can hit that has resources for any mental health crisis that you, your family, or a community member or neighbor may be experiencing. And I encourage you to make yourself aware of suicide prevention tips, techniques, learn to communicate, to discuss mental health. It's time for us to be able to acknowledge and be aware that mental health is an illness just like diabetes is, and that there are ways to address it, ways to support our family members, community members, and ourselves through that, and any opportunity we can take to educate ourselves about it and help ourselves and each other and our families and our community is an opportunity that will make ourselves make our community a better place to be in, and will allow people to grow and reach their full potential regardless of what they may be experiencing at any given time. So next week is National Suicide Prevention Line, and again, on this webpage, thank you APS for doing this. A number of resources for mental health, the National Suicide Prevention Line, LGBTQ Lifeline, National Hope Line, Crisis Link Regional Hotline, SAMHSA National Helpline, local resources. Please access them if needed, and thank you for allowing me to do that. Okay. So, colleagues, do you have any remarks or comments for Ms. Johnson on the first day of school report? Ms. Van Dorn?
Thank you. I want to comment on transportation, but I want to start by saying thank you for a wonderful first day report. So much heart and so much caring. It's one of the things that comes most strongly from our staff and the people who welcome the kids back to school and the families, and you could really feel that. So thank you for your leadership. Thank you. I wanted to just comment on transportation for a moment. I'm the liaison from the school board to the Arlington Committee for Transportation Choices, which is a joint APS school board, APS county committee, and they were hard at work last night. We met for 2.5 hours, and the staff went through all the work that they did to get up to this point of the opening day. So this was the second day, and that involved the miraculous achievement of hiring a full complement of bus drivers, of having as many crossing guards as possible. Commercial, we need crossing guards, please. Go on the website. We still need crossing guards. And the call center was working all through on Sunday. And we opened up 5 new schools, which required many, many new bus routes and traffic patterns. We reconfigured the drop-offs at Arlington Career Center. So as I sat in the meeting, I was overwhelmed by how much got done in the last few months to make that first day manageable for families and staff. And at the same time that I was taking all of that in, I was watching staff listen to the committee members talk about how we might do this better in the next few days and going forward. And I watched the staff diligently take that information on board, and I acknowledge that we have work to do. We continue to be a growing school system. Our systems are catching up with that, and we're making some fundamental shifts in how we're doing business. The hub stops, doing as much as we can with students riding the public transit. There are 80 students in the first year from the first day who signed up to be taking public transit rather than our school buses. That is a shift both the county and APS wants to do. So I wanted to take a moment to say that committee is up and running. We are also looking for 3 new members, elementary, middle, and high school representatives. Anybody is welcome. They're public meetings, and the staff welcomes our support as we go through really a massive shift in how we transport our kids in Arlington. It's a big job. Our streets are increasingly congested. We want the kids to be on the buses the minimal amount of time possible, and it's a huge, huge undertaking. So the last thing I'll say is please be patient. I know that not all calls have been answered, that all emails have been answered, and I know having 4 kids that it's your children and you're super worried. They are hearing you and they're trying to respond as quickly as possible, but I beg you for your patience. And I just wanted to add that and say thank you, Mr. Chadwick, to you and your staff and all the school people out there who have been supporting that effort. It's greatly appreciated.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Van Dorn. Anyone else have questions? Ms. O'Grady?
Thank you, Chair Talento. As I went around on the first day of school, I was really excited and amazed by what I saw. And I want to thank all the parents for their enthusiasm. I want to encourage them to get involved with their PTAs, to volunteer at their schools, because their support and involvement helps all the children at the school. So I hope all the excitement that I was able to witness on the first day will continue all year long through parental involvement and support of all of our students in our schools. I also want to say this is the first time I was able to actually go to some new schools. In particular, I didn't go to Fleet the day that it opened, but I went to their open house a few days earlier, and how excited I was to be able to enter a school that started as a pencil drawing and a concept, and just remembered how when I sat on the building level planning committee, how parents and community leaders and teachers dreamed about what that school may be, and to step in it and to see kids excited with their parents exploring the space, how precious that was, that just a thought could turn into something that children could love so much. And so that just reminded me that I wanted to thank all the people who worked on the building level planning committees for Fleet and the Heights, and also say a big thank you to all the people who will be working on the building level planning committee for the Career Center and for the Reed site, because it is amazing to see how your dreams and thoughts can really impact children, and to see their eyes wide open and excitement about their new surroundings. So it's a really great moment, and we don't get there without all the people on the staff who work hard to make that happen as well. All the teachers who set up the rooms, all the construction workers, all of the staff that help plan and design the building and make those things happen. So thank you to everyone who made the first day of school possible, and also thank you to the people who have worked on the Dorothy Ham Middle School as well. And then, Ms. Johnson, I had one question for you regarding the first day numbers. I thought we were just a few students shy of 28,000 students in our system. I think that's what the slide might have indicated. I know we have a lot of pre-K students who don't start on the first day. Some, as you mentioned, start on the second day of school. Others roll in over weeks. And so does that number, 27,996 students, account for all the other pre-K students we expect to come in over the next few weeks?
So the numbers I shared with you earlier were just for the first day count. So we'll be adding, thank you for sharing that, we'll be adding those numbers as we continue to monitor enrollment.
Okay, so we can expect even more numbers. We know those students
Without
are
a doubt.
coming.
We know they're here, and we know more are coming.
Yes, okay.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Johnson. We very appreciate that presentation. Next, we have the consent agenda. I understand we have speakers on this item. Generally, the presentation goes first, and then we have speakers, but with the consent agenda, there is no presentation. So I will review the speaker guidelines, and then I will ask Ms. Elliott to call our speakers. The school board welcomes public comment and allows comment at most regular board meetings. If you would like to speak but have not signed up electronically, you must submit a speaker slip to the clerk before the agenda item you wish to speak on is called. Speakers are called in the order which they sign up. However, if there are student speakers, we invite them to speak first so they do not have to stay out late on a school night waiting for their turn. Each speaker may speak for up to 2 minutes, and there's a timer to help you keep track of time. The timer begins when the speakers start speaking, and you should conclude your remarks when the buzzer sounds. To ensure all speakers are understood, regardless of their native language, the board has made the following revision to current guidelines. If a speaker addresses the board in a language other than English and an interpreter is present, the speaker will have 2 minutes to speak, and the interpreter will have up to 2 additional minutes to translate the comments for the board. All comments should address matters related to Arlington Public Schools. Speakers should be courteous and address your comments to the entire school board. Generally, board members do not respond to public comments at meetings. If you have written comments, please give them to the clerk to distribute to the board. We ask audience to refrain from applauding, but you can applaud using sign language. And we encourage you to do that so that we can see your support for the speaker, but still allow for an efficient process in moving through our speakers and the meeting. Thank you, and Ms. Elliott.
Thank you. We have 3 speakers tonight. First is Leslie Stockton.
Good evening, Madam Chair and school board members. I'm Leslie Stockton. I am the Arlington Education Association Vice President, and I wanted to speak to agenda item 9 related to the leave policy that is going to be addressed tonight at the school board. I just wanted to preemptively appreciate you for your hard work and for the time that you've taken, as well as the consideration that you've taken in regard to the full-time release president issue related to Arlington Education Association. Your work, your consideration shows us that you value the strong relationship that we hold with you, with our leadership here in the county, as well as the support that you provide for our employees, and of course, that also trickles down to our students. That's why we do the work we do. So I just wanted to take a moment to thank you all for the time that you've spent, the consideration that you've given, the swift action that you have taken, because your swift action and that strong support indicates that you know that this is all for children, that we're all here for the children, and that you value every person who is in this organization that wants to make a difference in the lives of children. So thank you each. I appreciate you.
Thank you for your comments.
All right. Next, we have Melissa Schwaber.
You may know me as a strong advocate for immersion, but you may not know why. 8 years ago, before my daughter Maddie started as an APS kindergartner with type 1 diabetes, we scheduled meetings with different principals. We were fortunate to meet with Cynthia Johnson at Claremont, and we quickly knew that she would do everything in her power to keep Maddie safe and thriving in school. And thus we became an immersion family. I understand this is just a quick policy update to get something in writing about insulin pumps, with a longer review process in the future, but I have some questions and concerns. There are times when there's not a registered nurse or nurse aide in a school building, especially in middle school and elementary schools. This policy update doesn't allow principal designees to reinsert insulin pumps. What happens if the pump comes out at the wrong time? Will parents have to drop everything and rush to school? Who will provide the training on these insulin pumps? There are currently 6 different pumps on the market. And when I asked the middle school nurse, who has kids on multiple pumps, about this update on Friday, she was unaware it was even happening. Maddie also wears a continuous glucose monitor, or CGM, that sends her blood sugar reading to my cell phone so I can monitor while she's at school. Under current APS policy, clinic and school staff do not interact with CGMs. About once a month, I get an alert that Maddie's blood sugar is dangerously low. I call her cell, but she doesn't hear it in her bag. So I call the clinic, but sometimes the phone is busy. And then I call the school front desk, and the office person walks to the clinic, and then the clinic calls me back, and then they start the search for Maddie. All the while, her blood sugar is continuing to drop. Sometimes it's she's in class, and other times she's at lunch or in the halls. If our goal is to keep kids safe at school, but the tools exist to monitor her blood sugar, we should use them instead of playing a game of telephone. I look forward to the upcoming engagement process on the health policy. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Schreiber. Appreciate your comments.
Thank you. And our final speaker is Ingrid Gant.
Good evening to Talento Chair, to school board members, to our interim superintendent, Ms. Johnson, to the executive leadership team, to everybody watching at home, because I know VEA is watching as well as Arlington, Virginia. I will tell you that it is an honor to be here to see you take this vote. We are anticipating that it's going to go in a positive direction. I stand with the former president, Jane Foster, with expectations and just appreciation for you taking action. We have seen the newspaper state that Arlington is coming up against the VRS in a certain way, and we say cheer on, fight on, because we're going to do that with you. I will tell you I've been reached out from every full-time release president in the state, 6 of them and even more of our BEA staff, just commending you on what you're about to do. I tell you that I'm still nervous. To not receive a check from APS is kind of strange to not get that after almost 27 years. But I will just take a plea out of what I'm looking at, and we talk about our partnerships. And it's stated that it's developed to support strong connections among school families, the community, and to broaden opportunities for student learning, development, and growth. Tonight you see bus drivers. They're here. Tonight you see paraprofessionals. They are here. Tonight you see high school educators. They are here. Tonight you see middle school educators. They are here. Tonight you see elementary educators, preschool educators. We are from every part. The administrative assistant staffs are here. We are everywhere because we are one. And so we applaud you and ask that when you take this vote, you not only think of today, but what's to come before. Thank you so much.
Thank you for your comments, Ms. Gant. And again, we ask that instead of applause, you do the American Sign Language applause, which will help us with our meeting. Thank you so much. So we are now ready to act on consent. May I have a motion?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes 5-0. I am pleased to announce that under consent, the board appointed Kathleen Mcsweeney as Vice Chair of the Joint Facilities Advisory Council. Ms. Mcsweeney, are you here this evening? I know she was going to try to make it, but I don't see her. However, I know that Greg Greeley, the Chair of our Joint Facilities Advisory Council, is here. Thank you. Thank you for your leadership on this, and we're excited that you'll be working with Ms. Mcsweeney on the JFAC. We also reappointed Chandra Kroll and Stacy Snyder to the Advisory Council on School Facilities and Capital Programs, and appointed Mr. Chip Goyette to the Career Center BLPC. And I believe our Career Center BLPC chair is here or was here earlier, and we thank him again for his leadership, Mr. Black. Ted Black? Oh, excellent. Thank you for being here. The board also approved changes to 2 board policies, the leave policy and the school health services policy. Board members, do you have any comments on the consent items? Yes.
I just wanted to find out regarding with the health services policy that Ms. Schwaber talked about. When is it that we're going to take that up again to address maybe some of the concerns that she addressed?
Because we're in transition, this is a discussion that I had with Dr. Murphy and Ms. Burgos, but Ms. Johnson, if you have an update, please. please correct me or follow up behind me. My understanding is that it's going to come back, I believe, in late September or October, because the Virginia Code, the General Assembly acted and changed the code on this policy, so we have to now update it once again. So we'll come back at that time, and you can hopefully address the concerns that were shared this evening through that. Ms. Johnson? Okay, thank you.
So thank you, and at that time, we'll be able to have people comment on it for if they have concerns about this as well.
It will come up for information, and then we will approve it on the following meeting for action. And I would ask Ms. Johnson to follow up with the concerns shared today to ensure that if, I believe our PIP did have some of this addressed, but perhaps we can, if you could follow up on that so that when we bring it back, then we can ensure that the needs are being met accordingly. Thank you, Ms. O'Grady. Any other comments on our consent agenda? We will now hear citizen comment on non-agenda items. Ms. Elliott, would you please call the speakers? Okay, great, thank you. We have one monitoring item tonight, an update on the pre-kindergarten to grade 12 instructional programs pathway. Ms. Johnson? Ms. Johnson, would you kindly introduce Ms. Stengel to present the IPP monitoring item?
Ms. Stengel is going to provide us with the pre-K through 12th grade instructional pathway, instructional program pathway. So I'd like to turn it over to Ms. Stengel.
Good evening. I'm happy to introduce the Pre-K-12 Instructional Program Pathways, which we consider to be a planning tool for getting ready for more students as we add more buildings and more students come to Arlington. So I'm going to give you a little bit of background on the rationale for the IPP, and then I'm going to be joined by staff from the Department of Teaching and Learning, including Wendy Pilch, the Director of Early Childhood and Elementary Education, Ty Bird, the Director of Secondary Education. Sarah Putnam's not here, but she worked with us on this. And then we'll also hear from school staff who were part of the process for shaping the IPP. Katie Willett is the Wizards team leader, grade 7 at Williamsburg Middle School, one of our neighborhood schools. And Eric Healy is the assistant principal at the Career Center. So as you all know, APS enrollment is growing, and we expect it to continue to grow. As we look at our projections, we see more students coming. We have a school open in 2021 with the Reed Elementary School, as well as the renovated education center where we all used to work. Over the past few years, we've done a lot of work to prepare for the buildings that open this year. And as we've done this, we've learned a lot of things. I think probably one of the biggest learning experiences that I went through was when we were preparing for the education center. We had a process to actually decide what would go in those 500 to 600 seats. And I went back and pulled some of the information that we had at that time. We had probably 10 proposals of different instructional programs that could go in there. We had a team that came together that represented both families, schools, our staff who were doing the work. And part of my job was to actually do the compiling and the analysis of the results. And I think as we looked at the different opportunities of programs we could have put in there, what we learned was, in many cases, we were competing with programs that already existed. We might be taking staff away from other schools that, maybe taking foreign languages, so maybe you couldn't offer as many at a neighborhood high school as you would as you centralize foreign language. You might be taking some of those arts opportunities out. We actually took a step back, and I think you made a good decision at that point. We need to look at this as a whole. When we add new schools, we need to step back and say, what makes a sense for all of our schools? Sometimes the easiest thing is to do this at that next site, but it impacts every other school that we're working with, especially at the grade level. So this gives us a way to begin to have those conversations. It also lets us look at transportation costs, those other things you heard tonight. It lets us plan appropriately. Any decision about one school impacts all other schools, so we need to take this approach as we look at new buildings, additional capacity through additions or renovations, and then changes for boundaries, because boundaries actually can redefine school programs as well. So my team of planners and the analysts that are in my office need this framework to put the goals for teaching and learning at the forefront of our work. The IPP is a tool that we'll use to shape the work that we bring to the table. It actually helps us have a conversation with our instructional leaders. This summer, we used this work to begin having conversations with the elementary team. So we had school elementary administrators, our teachers don't work during the summer, and we had central office elementary folks at the table along with our support departments who all play a role in this to begin planning for the next boundary process and also to shape what the priorities are for the CIP. Again, with that lens of what is best for students and teaching and learning in front of all of that work. We'll continue to work with school staff as we plan also for the Education Center and the schools. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Wendy.
Thank you, Lisa. So when we think about why we need this IPP, we have to think back to the mission and the vision. Ensuring that students learn and thrive in safe and healthy and supportive learning environments. And we want to create opportunities for students to really foster their dreams and explore their futures. And we did some work gathering feedback from the community and doing some visioning, and you'll hear in a minute from Ms. Willett a little bit from the days we spent visioning, looking at the research to see where our instructional programs should go and where we are now. But we have had some feedback along the way. We're looking at that profile of a Virginia graduate. That is really, at the forefront of the work we're looking at to see what do these students need to know and be able to do later in their lives. So I'm gonna go ahead and turn it over to Katie to give us a little information about the visioning work that was done last year.
Hi. So I represented the TCI as the chair of TCI, and I was also there as a middle school teacher bringing the perspective I have. At my table alone, I saw the diversity of the staff that was involved in this process. I had an admin from one of our neighborhood schools. There's admin from HB. We had an elementary teacher in the Montessori program along with somebody for transportation. And even at our small table sitting and talking through what has been the programs in APS and envisioning what could potentially be, it was fascinating to have all of those different perspectives and the hats that each one of us wear as we think about what impacts students in their education in this system. And as Lisa was talking about, changes at one school have a big impact. That's something that we're experiencing at Williamsburg with Dorothy Ham opening this year. Our student body is drastically different than it has been previously. So this process is really important to look at what are the programs and how do we bring on programs that we don't already have to diversify the education, but also to enhance what's here for all of the students.
Good evening, everybody. Thank you. Another country you heard from. This is the reason behind why we're doing what we're doing with regard to the framework for IPP, and that we expect to communicate multiple pathways, personalized, individualized pathways for student success as they matriculate through Arlington Public Schools, pre-K through 12. So we're excited about the opportunity that I think considering option schools brings to us so that we can help students and families visit with various opportunities or various instructional programs before they graduate. There's not a linear setup. It can be linear, but it can also break out of that linear program to visit with multiple instructional pathways. The school board has defined the policy within our neighborhood schools that you're going to establish an attendance area and you are guaranteed admission into your attendance area as a school. But in addition to those, you can go to an option school, which has been defined as it has a unique philosophy such as the Montessori program, or it has staff with specific training like IB or AP, and it has been recognized by an outside agency. Both IB and Montessori offer those. Here is a proposed matriculation guideline through our option schools. And again, while it can look linear, it can also be a separate and apart from a linear progression through these schools. So a student who has attended IB for elementary and middle school very well might not continue in IB, but might do so. So if our families are going to visit in our program of studies and look for course options that help them get with the end in mind and where they want to be at high school, then they have a clear articulation of that process here now than than they have in the past. So we're going to continue to work on this because some of the programs that we hope to offer have not been developed yet. So we're going to continue to work with our community to define those sorts of options so that we can fill in all those blank spaces there so that students who have an inclination toward fine and performing arts know how they're going to progress toward that end. My good friend Eric Healy is here to talk a little bit about how that plays out in Arlington Tech.
Thank you. And I also want to talk a little bit about the process that we went through as an IPP. And it started with what Mr. Bird had as our definition. We really needed to define what a program was. Coming from my experience at the Career Center, we have several programs there. Some are option and some are just programs. And so how do we define that? And then we also discussed what are the current programs that we have, what are the current options in APS, and really evaluated those. As Ms. Willett talked about the diversity of the individuals that were a part of this program, we had individuals from elementary, secondary, and all of our alternative programs. So it was really important to evaluate and assess what we currently hold here in APS. In addition, we looked at what other districts are doing, both local and not so local. And when you look at things like the academies of Loudoun in Loudoun County, or even the academy model in Fairfax. Or we also looked at things in North Carolina and what they do as far as different option programs. And then lastly, we looked at community interests and the surveys that had been done by planning and evaluation, and looked at what the community was looking for and what the needs were within that framework. And then finally, near and dear to my heart is Arlington Tech and how that fits sort of within our context. We just welcomed 150 freshmen in class of 2023. And as you know, we'll have 600 students within the next few years, and then 800 additional students at the Career Center, and what that entails. So this work is incredibly important, not just to me personally in our building, but to APS as a whole and the students and the families that we have.
So our next steps is to take this work and continue moving it forward. We have, when we did the options and transfer policy, we did not include a definition, so we expect to bring back a definition to get added to that policy for the school board to vote upon. I think it'll have to go through the policy process so that it gets reviewed and we allow for input from the community. We're going to continue working over the course of the year with our secondary schools, similar to what we did with elementary. Elementary, we have a lot more schools. When we get to the secondary levels, we'll probably include more people like we've seen here tonight, to make sure that we're shaping this in a way that it fits for all schools. Over 2021, we're going to publish an update to the PIP that begins to define those options that would be available for the fall of 2021-22. And we'll communicate information at all the information nights. The school board adopts elementary and high school boundaries by that December. And then APS conducts the lotteries for those options as we move into that 2021 school year with the Ed Center opening and with the Reed opening. And then the new boundaries apply the next year. We need to do this work at all levels. We've got middle school things that we have to plan for. We know that the IPP talks about IB being a middle school option. It's not sort of a set plan. The plan is more of a framework for how we have these conversations. So what we're doing is taking it back to the appropriate groups that involve the grade level staff to begin to shape those things out. And it's one of those things we'll probably come back to as we plan for new schools, boundary changes, all those things that we have to do. It's not necessarily a schedule right off because we've got to catch up. We haven't been doing this work and we need to now focus on getting it done, but then later on it may happen more in tune with new buildings or capacity changes that we need to address. So with that, I think we're done.
Thank you, Ms. Single, and thank you, all of you, for presenting. Ms. Elliott, do we have any speakers on this item?
We have one speaker, Mr. Kenny Kraft.
Where's the clock? Oh. Hi, welcome back. It's I appreciate all the work that everyone's done and staff over the summer to get ready for another school year. So thank you for that. My name is Kenny Kraft. I have 2 kids at ATS and a 4-year-old who someday we hope will start at ATS. I participated in last year's community engagement process for the IPP, and I definitely see the value in thinking strategically about ensuring that a growing student population has equal access to a variety of option programs that we offer. I'm glad that we have access to ours. I was disappointed to see that in the PowerPoint presentation that the traditional model that has been successful at ATS was at least not mentioned or not among the proposed options for the future. I understand it's still a work in progress. I understand that no one's talking about right now eliminating ATS, but I'm concerned, and a number of our parent community members are also concerned that the proposal, if adopted as it is, could pave the way for eliminating the school community that we've come to know and love. So I would encourage board members and staff to pump the brakes before deciding to eliminate any existing program in the future, and especially an award-winning and diverse program like ATS. And rather than eliminate it, I would encourage that we consider expanding and replicating it. For 40 years, ATS has been closing the achievement gap for a diverse student community that reflects all of Arlington County. It currently represents 30 countries, 21 different languages are spoken at our school, and ATS has proved to provide a balance or help balance enrollment and increase school diversity. So eliminating it seems to go in the wrong direction. ATS is recognized nationally. Niche.com has named it as the number 2 best elementary public school in the DC area. It's won 2 blue ribbons, nominated for a 3rd. It works, over 500 people on the wait list. It has more applications every year than the immersion programs combined. So I would encourage that we work together to build on what the community wants. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Kraft, for your comments. We appreciate you being here. Any other speakers? Okay, thank you. Colleagues, do you have any questions or comments for Ms. Stingle and her staff? Mr. Goldstein?
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for the presentation. Recalling our discussion at the work session on this subject, which was just like, was it last week? Was it last week? Yes. Yeah. We were talking then about using the AFSAP as an analogy. So the AFSAP has, certain documents that underpin it, has a periodicity to it, has a change process. What's the change process for the IPP? And the reason I'm asking is because we want to have APS operations and the board in concert when, we give info to the community and answer questions for the community. So being able to point to the IPP and all of us saying, this is our plan, this is what we're going to do this year or in future years or whatever, is important to have, to establish that, the concreteness of that path. So my question is, what's the change process? And let me just read the supporting points here. What are the documents that constitute its authoritative sources? How will they be reviewed? On what cycle will it be issued? Is it annually, semi-annually, some other cycle? How will the board and the community be apprised of potential changes that are percolating? And then, of course, the final change when it's decided upon, and who will make that decision to change the IPP? So that's quite change question in a nutshell.
Let me just give a little bit of context for somebody who doesn't know the Arlington Facilities and Student Accommodation Plan. That is because I remember we need to say what that is, right? We do that every 2 years in preparation for our CIP and our capital improvement plan, and it helps lay out the data, updates what the projections are, it tells us what our capacity needs are, and it lays out sort of those foundational pieces that we use to begin to plan for the CIP. The IPP is new, so right at the moment, We don't, it's a draft. It gives us something to start with, and it lets us have those conversations. So I don't know exactly what the cycle will be. Right now, I think the cycle is we need to do this with all of our levels. We also need to pace it so that they can do it within their work. We need to actually plan for middle school. We need to plan for high school, along with what we're starting to do already with elementary school. I think once we do that, we have to update this with documents when the state changes the profile of a graduate or a requirement changes for how we serve students. We'll actually defer to our staff from teaching and learning to make sure that we have the most current information shaping the work. And that if the program, if the vision needs to realign, that is the forefront of how we're directing it. If all of a sudden they say everybody has to be in a workplace for a year for their last year of school, we've got to sort of readjust and go that way. It's not saying that's what they're going to do, but we need to actually align to what the state is telling us. And so if our strategic plan actually takes a different focus the next time around, we might have to adjust to that as well. So some of it will depend on those sorts of changes. I think the other piece for us is as we're adding new facilities or we're preparing for a boundary change or looking at programs, and if there's ways to spread capacity so that it doesn't have to be a boundary change, but maybe there's a program move that makes sense at that point in time, that those things are being part of a discussion, and it's not looking at one thing, but it's looking across that school level to say what makes the most sense at this time given the space we have and the needs of the students who are in that program.
And speaking instructionally, if we could, developing the IPP gives us the ability to be agile. When and if the state changes graduation requirements again, it would be nice to know that we have a framework in place so that we can be proactive instead of reactive. We have something in place that we can reach out to the community, find out what is wanted, work with our instructional staff, find out what we're capable of doing with current existing practices, and if we need to add anything to that so that we can meet the accommodations or the expectations of the state level. Typically, Arlington has been above what the state has expected. That may not always be the case. So we would like to believe that we have a framework in place so that when things change, we have a dynamic capacity to respond to those changes instructionally.
Thank you.
Thanks. I think you're answering the what. And I'm asking about the how. So the last speaker said there was nothing in the IPP about the traditional model, and it doesn't say that it's going away, but it doesn't say that it's part of the pathway either. Suppose that decision, excuse me, suppose that decision were made, that it's going to be, you're going to add it to the pathway, or decide it's going to go away or something. How would that decision be made? How would the IPP change? What's the process for changing it to include that new decision?
We're still working with that. I think the work we've done this summer with the elementary staff has really, the people who actually are responsible for instruction are helping us shape that plan for going forward. They keep that instructional vision in front of it, and we bring back the data that shows how those sort of scenarios might play out so that they can actually see what works and what doesn't. There are things that they want to do that we can't do with a boundary change. So it's sort of having them help us. Really, with the work we did this summer was looked at what are the priorities when we look at the boundary policy for students, really those ones that make the biggest impact on ensuring that every student gets what we want in our strategic plan for them. And are there other things that could help us get there that may not be in our toolbox now, but are things that we could consider? And they're shaping that piece of it. So they will actually be helping us as we plan for, if traditional is not in there, does that mean it goes away? We're not saying anything goes away at this point. What we're saying is we need to have those conversations. When I look at the wait list for different schools, I could fill that school if we move them to a bigger site in 2 years from now. So to me, that doesn't make sense to just make it go away. Does it maybe need to evolve over time? That's a conversation that I think that needs to be had with the instructional staff across that level.
So, sorry, go ahead.
As an example of how that might play out, 3 of the options that are listed on this slide, early college, high school, finding performing arts, and a hybrid high school. They were born of a conversation that came about when we were going to repurpose the space at the Ed Center. When we knew that we had some additional space, we reached out to the community, put together a committee of interested citizens, educators, and administrative staff to define what was possible with the space that we had. Were we just going to use it as additional seating for Washington Lee forever, or were we going to use it as an agile space that could be used to meet the needs of our community? And during that conversation, those three ideas were born, and now we're moving on those. If we were to use this process in the future, we would have additional committee meetings where citizens who are interested in participating in that conversation could come to us with ideas or suggestions about space that had become newly available or a space that we were going to create for the purposes of fitting the needs of all of our students.
So is it fair to say that this is a work in progress?
Absolutely.
And that as you said, it's a draft, and as it evolves more, we'll be getting closer to these answers about
Very true.
the change process?
I know, speaking from secondary schools, what would we do with the Thomas Jefferson School for Science and Technology? That is not currently included. Is that something that we would include, or will we think because it's not our school, we would not put it on our IPP process? But it is a debate that needs to be had with more than just the people in the Department of Teaching and Learning.
So I just want to clarify. TJ's not on here. It is in our options, our list of options right now. We're not changing that list of options. What this is doing here is, as we're planning for the facilities that we manage and the staffing that we do, this is about the internal planning for what we offer. It's not saying we're changing what's on that list right now, because we've had some questions about that.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Goldstein. I just want to follow up on that. There is actually a policy on program changes, policy K-3, that states the school board must approve the institution of new programs, substantial revision of existing instructional programs, or discontinuation of programs. And so I think that while that last was adopted in '07, and I'm sure is up for revision soon, that is as it stands right now. And so it's just to know that any discontinuation of a program would have to be approved by the school board, and it would follow, according to policy, a recommendation by the superintendent, involvement of the community, and presentation to the community for comment. So I think regarding the programs that are in or not in the IPP, we do have a policy that addresses that. And so I'm going to open it up to other comments before I share any comments I may have. Yes, Ms. O'Grady.
Thank you. I just wanted to say a few words about this instructional program pathways. The first thing is thank you. This has been a 2-year process where we started off with surveys from the community. We went out to the community, asked them what they'd like to see in their future schools, and I think we might have even spoken to students as well. So this is an opportunity for us to be strategic. And as we're growing, this is the right time to be strategic. This is important because as we expose our students to different opportunities in school, whether it's immersion or the arts or project-based learning or what have you, as our students get excited about this, we want to make sure we're thinking about how we can continue that learning and engagement, because we want to make sure that our children have multiple pathways to success. And you know, our option programs are important, and I think one of the most important reasons why they play such a crucial role in our system is because our system is built on neighborhood schools. And that might sound weird to begin with, but to me, our community likes our neighborhood schools because they offer some stability. And we are able to continue to offer relative stability because some people choose not to go to their neighborhood schools. So the boundaries over time stay relatively the same. And that's because I think people are able to opt out. As we continue to grow, it is important to understand that we have the ability to be able to look at continuing to grow our neighborhood options, but also continuing to grow it's important to look at growing our neighborhood offerings, but also growing our options, because we still need to be able to have that safety valve of having people go to different schools. Also, it's important to recognize that multiple pathways to success in our system are incredibly important. I think that as we continue to work on this, we need to bring the community along. We need to think about it as we grow, and I think this is an important step for the future of our school system, and I'm excited to see it, and I'd like to figure out how it will play a role as we look at adding more students and as we look at adding more seats. So thank you for your work.
Dr. Kennan?
All right, thank you. Thank you very much. So Ms. Stengel, thank you for, first of all, as you started off with your summary for really why this process is important. I agree with a lot of what my colleagues have already said. But simply put, we are growing. We want instruction to lead our planning rather than construction. And that's why this is so important. And it has been already a 2-year process. And we're really getting somewhere. And I know I'm not going to repeat everything we talked about at our recent work session where we discussed this, but we're kind of talking about really getting this, having this be a regular part of our planning process so that we can keep looking back to it, updating it as new information comes or as teaching and learning digs into things more and such. So that's, I think this is a great start. It's really great to see the presentation with the diversity of staff from all over the different parts of APS participating. I think that was something that we hadn't really seen. Shout out to my son Fred's 7th grade science teacher. Thank you for coming, Katie. And anyway, at the end of the day, this really is all about supporting multiple pathways, which is part of our strategic plan. I do have a few questions I want to ask about that, though. So I know that we've kind of from the beginning talked about how this IPP then was going to lead us back to being able to revise our options and transfer policy. Between the work session and today, I'm sorry I hadn't noticed it at that point, but I realized that, in this proposal and framework, we talk about full capacity programs and programs within neighborhood schools. In our options and transfer policy, we talk about option schools. And I don't think we actually talk about programs within schools as part of our policy. So I'm just going to mention that. It is a question, except I'm not really sure I want to put anyone on the spot to answer it. I think it's something that it's a mismatch at the moment, and I think we need to think about that a little bit. I think when we've worked on options and transfers a couple of years ago, I think our intention really was to talk about option schools. And I think there's just another piece that we've defined that we in our policy haven't defined. If this is the direction we're going, if anyone has a comment, or we can, I'm happy to say we need to work.
We would benefit from some time to review those.
Yeah, I think it's something we need to talk about.
Yeah,
Dr. Kennan, could you just clarify? I don't think I understand. I
in
know
our
that
options and transfer policy, we very specifically define option schools.
But we did not define programs?
Especially programs within schools.
So you're talking about like the IB program?
Yes, a lot of these, right? Several of these are defined as programs within schools.
But I remember us I don't disagree with you if it's not in there, but I remember us discussing specifically programs like IB and what was in Kenmore and what was in
I know we did, but I don't think that we really
we put it
solidified.
Well, fortunately, it's in our policy review calendar.
Right, I know. I'm mentioning that because I think maybe this is something we need to get back to.
I'd actually like to suggest, I know you guys on your policy review team actually give us some direction prior to the staff starting the work on it, and this would be a great conversation for you to actually inform us if there's some of those changes you want us to implement.
I'm just mentioning that I think we do have to think about it. So a question then about the early college, high school. At our work session, I think in the spring, it was clarified, I think I asked at that point, there's no Arlington Tech on here, and yet that is the one program that we've, really launched and is growing, and at the time was told, well, that's in this framework defined as early college. I personally don't think they're the same thing. Could you share why or how is it the same or is it different? And we have perhaps an expert on that topic.
I will do my best to answer. I agree that of the options that are there, the early college is the closest to Arlington Tech, and I think specifically because when you look at dual enrollment and the increase of the number of students that we have in dual enrollment, in particular because in Arlington Tech it's really heavily pushed that our students engage in dual enrollment. And so I think that fits into this early college component. A lot of the conversation we had in the IPP actually surrounded the difference between a dual enrollment program and an early college program, like physically going to Nova and being on campus as an early college program versus what we're doing within dual enrollment. I think early college is just one thing that defines Arlington Tech. Really, Arlington Tech is defined by its instructional programming, which is that project-based learning that students engage in throughout all of their coursework in all 4 years. And so when we talk about the IPP in this draft phase, and that's sort of why I discussed where does Arlington Tech fit in, what is it that we are defining it as, because we have a definition within our building, but we need to ensure that we're all on the same page as a community as to what that is so that we can communicate that effectively to our parents and our students. I hope I answered your question.
And I would add one more thing to that I thought was important as we talked about it. You know, part of these things was also looking at what our neighborhood schools do, and I think as problem-based learning was on the list initially. We don't want other schools to not do that because it's an option that's different. So a lot of our schools are actually within some of the coursework doing problem-based learning. So this was sort of that different piece that
Yeah, I know. And I'll say, I know that was the rationale that I remember Dr. Natras saying project-based learning should happen everywhere, STEM should happen everywhere. I just fundamentally disagree with the idea that because we should offer those in our neighborhood schools, Arlington Tech itself is not a specific, different instructional program that is not captured with early college. We have fine and performing arts up there, for example. So to me, STEM is simply missing from the list. I mean, that multiple pathways, we know we have students who want to pursue STEM learning opportunities, project-based. We launched a program to do exactly that. And I hope as we get into revising, I think our STEM is a missing line on this. I'm fine with early college also being something we want to do, but I just think STEM is missing. So thank you for the comments on that. And then my last comment is, Ms. O'Grady was talking about neighborhood schools. It's funny because, this is a report about the different options that we would have, and of course those are options versus the neighborhood schools. But then one of the problems is it kind of comes across as like the neighborhood schools are kind of the baseline, and these are, they're great schools that don't get specifically defined. And I kind of wonder, again, in the revision, as you go forward, if maybe while we talk about these different options, we should really provide the definition and information about what a neighborhood school is. Not that it's just like not an option, but that it is a great option and it provides a variety of opportunities. And it's really, at the end of the day, what most of our families choose to do or do. So that's just sort of feedback for the next phase of this. It's been a ton of work already, I know. It's really exciting. We're getting started and we're in good shape. But just some thoughts for next steps. Thanks.
Thank you, Dr. Kennan. Ms. Van Doren?
Thank you very much. I want to thank you all for being here and explaining the process that you went through. Most of us lived through that and watched it as you nurtured it and grew it. And I know that I was captivated the first time the instructional pathways was presented, because it has always been a frustration of mine that because of our necessity to build, we were building and then going, yeah, we'll fill the seats. Well, this provides us with a living document that says this is how we're going to go about that, so that our instruction is leading, as Dr. Cannon said, the construction that we're doing. And I think we always sort of felt we were going to be doing that, but this is a very methodical process that you're going through to do that, and looking at what the requirements are going to be, as well as what we have, and then what the state wants us to be and where we should be going, knowing that it's not going to be perfect. There aren't clear-cut, cookie-cutter ways to go through, and I'm actually very grateful for that, because very few of our kids fit one particular path, particularly from kindergarten on. I have 4 kids who have graduated from this system, and I could never have predicted where they'd end up and what they sports they took, whatever they ended up doing, I couldn't have predicted it. So I really appreciate that you've got this living document that can be adjusted to fit as we grow. And that what I would ask is that as you do this, to keep it as up-to-date as possible on the website. Always provide ways for the community to provide input to you so that no one's surprised by anything that we're doing. So, and I know that ACI is very involved in this. That has representatives from throughout the school system. So if you can keep them apprised and keep those documents up to date and constantly sort of challenge yourselves to explain the rationale. I know it's hard, but it will be really helpful because then people won't be surprised when they read it. It'll always be there, and keep ACI, because that ACI will keep their schools up to date as best they can, and a constant back and forth would be great, because I know you're doing that with staff. So I encourage that, and I know that Mr. Goldstein refers to you know, what specifically is the path for change and how will we know. I think it would be useful that if you were to say something like, if there's going to be a change in the pathway, this is the process we would go through to do that so people are reassured. And I can reassure Mr. Kraft that in the PIP, Arlington Traditional Schools, the first school listed, we have not, as Ms. Talento said, been notified of any change or need to go through a process for change. So maybe if on the site it could comment on that and reinforce it with ACI so our community is aware of it. But I'm comfortable with this being a changing, evolving document that fits the time and what we're getting from the state and the nation, and also the desires of our community, that then provides input to our facility staff as they begin to think where schools should be, what should expand, what programs should actually expand, what schools should expand. We may be doing additions. Where would we put them? And looking at how our transportation system works, which, given the density of this community and people's desire for transportation, we can't run those option school buses at 30% capacity. It's not sustainable. So we have to figure that out. Somehow we have to figure it out. So I know I don't have any questions. I just want to say thank you for striving to do this, providing the framework. Keep going, but be as transparent as you possibly can. And let us support that and know when we're going to need to support changes you might see coming. Okay? Thank you very, very much.
Thank you, Ms. Van Doren. Mr. Goldstein?
Yeah, thank you. Sorry, one more short follow-up comment. The early college, I've spoken to a lot of people who are confused by that term, early college, and as Mr. Healy was talking about dual enrollment, it reminded me that I've spoken to a lot of people who are confused by that term also. So if you could, I know these are terms of art, but they're confusing to some people. And
there are various configurations to an early college. You can have students on your campuses being instructed by college educators or people who might be serving as adjunct professors at a local college, and they're providing instruction to your students. The curriculum is driven by the college, while we'll also offer concurrent credit for high school courses, for the courses for high school credit, but they're earning college credit from college professors typically. Some configurations have them learning on the college campus. So there's students of ours who are attending George Mason University and earning concurrent credit. So that's a different, oh, okay. That's a structure that some schools have, or some school communities have gone with. Dual enrollment for us is that we have teachers who have earned credentialing through a community college and can offer a course for high school and college credit concurrently. So they're in our classrooms being instructed by our teachers who are serving as adjuncts of Northern Virginia Community College, and when students successfully complete those classes, they have earned college credit and high school credit. So they're getting credit toward graduation from high school, but also beginning to work on an associate's degree. And some students can graduate from our high schools with an excess of 28 credit hours of college work.
I know this now,
okay,
after having been schooled in this for quite a while, but probably most of the people I talk to who don't understand this think early college means, you know, graduating after 11th grade or, you know, something like that. So just kind of keep that in mind, that there's a term here that maybe needs a little bit more, you know, clarity. And just the middle school column at the top says grades 6 through 9. Is that?
That's an error.
Okay, that's a typo. All right, I was, good. Thank you.
Nice catch.
Thank you, Mr. Goldstein. Thank you for the presentation. I also have a couple of comments and questions. I read the IPP draft report, and I really appreciate the framework and the work that was put into it. I think it's a good synthesis of all the work that's been encompassed over the last couple of years, and I noted the places where you're still looking to update, which just reminds us it is a draft and a living document. And I did notice some detailed descriptions of the programs, but maybe we can bold them, or maybe we start the document, put them more in a prominent place as people look for that, they understand as you're referring to early colleges. And I'll actually tie that into some of the comments from my colleagues, that many of which I agree. Ironically, I assumed that that these tables were new programs you're proposing or additions to what we existed, but I recognize that as I'm listening to our conversation, others assume that this was a description of what we wanted to grow and perhaps already existed, the confusion of what's not on here. And so because it's clear that we're all different readers, I would recommend you all consider actually having a table that lists what is in place, which then would address the neighborhood schools and say, here are neighborhood schools, this is what our neighborhood schools are. And I know I read that somewhere. And I think it might even be in the IPP, there was a blurb, I read it somewhere recently, but just highlighting it in your table of contents or in your descriptions of this is what this document is addressing, highlighting neighborhood schools, and then put the existing schools that are in place, and which ones are part of our history and our thread, which ones are following the new option definition. And so this way, as you develop the document and it becomes a resource document, it will clarify any confusion and then bring in the community to support our work as we're trying to define our growth with instruction, through instruction versus construction. So that's just some feedback, because I actually did not consider that because ATS wasn't on there, because Arlington Tech wasn't on there, that it meant something. I just assumed those are established. And so I realized that maybe that may have not been understood by all. I mean, I'm not sure, I don't know if that was the intent. So, and then the other comment I had was regarding the monitoring piece. And so I would ask, and I think I've heard it from some of my colleagues, that staff recommend how often you want to bring it to the board, and for now we can just put it on as an annual update and if there's more changes that need a biannual update, but if you have a recommendation as to how often we should bring this forth as a monitoring report, I think that would be helpful for all of us, and we'll defer to it. I would ask my colleagues that we consider deferring that recommendation to you and then putting it in our regularly scheduled work as board chairs create the agenda, board meeting agendas for the year. But I think that would be helpful so that we at least know it's going to come from monitoring every September. And then if you need to bring it in, or for even this year, if you, as you're developing, if you're like, there's been significant changes and you want to bring it back in the spring, let's do that. So I would just provide that feedback. And then this is sort of an aside, but it was brought up by Mr. Healy, and I'm only mentioning it because I recently, within the last 2 weeks, had a conversation with a community member about the numbers at the Career Center. And because we're about to adopt the Career Center BLPC charge this evening, or it's an action item tonight, and it specifically states that the programs that are in existence and the facilities for those programs will either be enhanced or replaced. In addition to the 600 Arlington Tech students that we're hoping to grow it to, and the 800 incoming students based on our Career Center BLPC charge, we also have 200 to 300 students there that are full-time that represent the Academic Academy, the Teen Parenting, the HILT Academy, and our PEP program. And in addition to those 200 to 300 students, we also have 700 to 900 students, are the ranges, from students that are coming to the Career Center that are from our comprehensive high schools, and they come in 3 shifts. So if you take the max at one point over the last since the time I've been on the board, that has come up. That'd be about 300 students at any given time for comprehensive. I think this year it's, I heard new numbers 700, but I know that's been the range. So I just want to add on to that as people are counting and considering it. We're hoping to grow Arlington Tech to 600, and that's the expectation. We have the 800 seats coming online, but we currently have 200 to 300 permanent students there in the other programs, as well as comprehensive students coming in 3 shifts, which total between 700 and 900 students. And I just mentioned that because it was a conversation I had within the last 2 weeks of someone saying, I don't understand. I said, I've been studying them for the last 2 years, I remember. And so that's all, and thank you again for the report and the information. We look forward to the work you're producing. We have one action item tonight, which is the adoption of the charge to the Career Center Expansion Building Level Planning Committee. Ms. Johnson, would you like to introduce the presenter?
Mr. Chadwick, I'd like to introduce our Assistant Superintendent for Facilities and Operation, and he will present the information.
Thank you. Good evening, Chair Talento, members of the board, Ms. Johnson. I am really pleased to bring the charge for the Arlington Career Center Expansion Project to you to adopt. I have been involved with the Career Center ever since I first came to Arlington Public Schools in 2011, and it holds a special place in my heart, and I'm determined that we will do the absolute best we can for the community and for the students of the Career Center, current and future. And I also want to add that, you know, just like many things we've discussed this evening, it takes an awful lot of people to get us to this point, and an awful lot of people have been involved in writing this charge, reviewing the charge, and one has to also recommend the Career Center Working Group and many of the other groups that took part in it. We want to recognize and thank them for all the work that they put into this effort. So we brought this to you for information in June, I think it was, and prior to that we had updated the policy F-5.7, construction and maintenance. And at that in that change, the school board appoints a chair and one of its members to act as liaison to each BLPC. The school board adopts a charge, which I hope you will do this evening, for each BLPC to include at a minimum the student capacity, the instructional program, the project schedule, and the funding approved by the school board. The BLPC uses this charge to provide input and feedback to the Department of Facilities and Operations and the architect through the concept and schematic design phases of the project, and to advise the school board on a path forward within the scope of its charge. Facilities and operations staff update the BLPC on the project as it proceeds through the subsequent use permit, design development, construction documents, bidding, construction, and post-construction phases. And what we're about to start now, of course, is that all-important concept design phase. The charge, the building level planning committee, the school board has developed the charge for it, and it is for the Arlington Career Center Expansion Project, and this is to facilitate effective stakeholder participation in the project in accordance with policy F-5.7, construction and maintenance. And the BLPC operates in accordance with APS Policy Implementation Procedure F-5.7, PIP-2, Building Level Planning Committees, which was also recently updated and adopted and approved by the superintendent. The BLPC, Career Center BLPC is charged with providing input and feedback on the Arlington Career Center Expansion Project, which will increase capacity of the Career Center by 800 plus seats by 2025, as provided in the FY 2019 to 28 Capital Improvement Plan, and increase the capacity of Arlington Tech to 600 seats as soon as possible, as provided in the FY 2017 to 26 CIP and the FY 2019 to 28 CIP. So as a reminder of what is included in the CIPs, in the fiscal year 2017 to 26 CIP, which was adopted on June 16th, 2016, that was for expansion of the Arlington Tech program up to 600 seats, which at that time was to be completed by the start of 2018-19 school year, with a total dollar value of $12.75 million. In the FY 2019 to 28 CIP, which was adopted on June 21st, 2018, the Arlington Tech program had an additional up to $6 million design and construction funds to expand capacity to 600 students, providing a total of $18.75 million for Arlington Tech, of which approximately $3.75 was spent on interior renovation projects in summer 2017 and 18, leaving about $15 million available to complete the expansion. The Career Center also in that FY 2019-28 CIP was up to $5.9 million planning and design funds to complete an athletic field and parking garage in time for the school year 2023 to 2024, to increase student capacity by 800 seats and construct a performing arts facility in time for school year 2025-2026. The CIP also proposed additional funding of up to $178.8 million to be included in future CIPs to complete design and construction of the project. And then as a reminder, we will be bringing another CIP to you in June of 2020, which will be the 2021 to 2030 CIP, and that may contain changes that come out of the concept design and BLPC process and the concept design that you approve in March. The project will provide the following. It will provide 800 plus additional seats for the Career Center option programs. It will accommodate the expansion of Arlington Tech to 600 seats as soon as possible. It will have a high school-sized gymnasium and assembly space, plus a performing arts center comprising theater, black box, theater, and music classrooms, a cafeteria, multi-use space, a multi-use outdoor synthetic turf field with some form of bleachers, 450 to 500 space parking garage below grade, or other parking scenarios to be developed in collaboration with Arlington County staff, the BLPC, and the PFRC. The Columbia Pike Library will remain in place unless or until a suitable new location is found for it. A replacement, enhancement, and expansion of all special facilities for existing Career Center, Career and Technical Education, CTE programs that may be demolished or altered as part of the project. So anything that is demolished or altered will be replaced and enhanced in the completed project. Future phases of expansion should be designed to allow as many different options as possible for phrasing, instructional programs, and outdoor athletic facilities, including possible neighborhood high school seats as and when needed and approved by future school boards. Instructional program. The instructional program for the 800 plus option seat expansion will be addressed no later than 2 years before the seats are completed, in alignment with the pre-K-12 instructional program pathways process we just heard about. IPP provides some direction regarding the future of instructional programs currently located at the Career Center, including accommodating potential growth of Arlington Tech. Educational specifications. The AE team is already collaborating with the Department of Teaching and Learning and with Facilities and Operations, and I should say Career Center staff, to develop educational specifications for the Career Center expansion project, as described above, for approval by the school board in October 2019. The educational specifications will be developed not only to adapt to changes in instructional programs with minimum disruption and cost, but also to accommodate future increases in student capacity that would require phased expansion beyond 800 seats. So total project cost. In accordance with the FY 2019 to 2028 CIP, the budget for the total project cost for the Career Center expansion project is approximately $185 million, plus approximately $13 million remaining for the expansion of Arlington Tech to 600 seats. The BLPC is, however, encouraged to recommend alternative concept designs that would reduce the total cost of the project. And the superintendent's recommendation is to adopt the charge.
Thank you, Mr. Chadwick. I appreciate the presentation. Are there any clarifying questions, colleagues? Oh, and do we have speakers? Thank you. Thank you. Actually, there's speakers after we make the motion, according to my script of following the process. And we haven't made the motion yet. So do we have, but thank you, because I didn't know that right off the top of my head. So I will be asking for it again, but just in case. Okay, well, there are no speakers, but we can, I'm learning my Robert's rules, and I hope that by the end of my chairmanship, I will have mastered them. Unfortunately, I won't have mastered them right now. So, okay, so we have no speakers, thank you, but colleagues, do you have any clarifying questions for Mr. Chadwick before we call for a motion? Okay, may I have a motion on this item?
I do have a motion, then would like to speak to it very
Thank you,
briefly.
Dr. Kennedy.
I move that the board approve the charge to the Career Center Expansion Building Level Planning Committee.
Is there a second?
Second.
And are there board comments?
Yeah, if I could.
Go ahead, Dr.
So first, I want to acknowledge, again, he was acknowledged earlier, but our chair, appointed chair to the Building Level Planning Committee is here, Ted Black. I'm very excited. I'll be the school board liaison to this process. And it's clear from the PowerPoint presentation that we have a lot to do. And I think had a brief conversation with our chair earlier where, casually paraphrasing him, I think he basically said, wow, we have a lot to do. But it's a tremendously exciting project. I'm really excited. We had appointed the chair, we appointed the committee. I think we're going to adopt the charge this evening, and then we're going to get started. I'm really looking forward to the work.
Pulling my sleeves up.
Yeah, let's roll up our sleeves. Absolutely.
Thank you, Dr. Kennedy. Colleagues, are there any other comments before we vote? Yes, Ms. Van Doren.
I just want to make sure that we recognize that this is a culmination of a great deal of work. The Career Center Working Group, I see a lot of the recommendations that it made regarding the facility and the project for the BLPC. That group, chaired by Kathleen Mcsweeney, sorted through a lot of issues and really wrestled with them, and it wasn't easy. We still have a lot of issues, but we have fewer because that group really looked at what that whole site could be and engaged with the community and brought us some recommendations, many of which I see threaded through there. So I want to make sure we acknowledge that group because the BLPC's work is going to be easier because that committee did the work that it did. So I'm very appreciative of that and appreciative of the fact that they acknowledge that right now, without some of the changes that may come in the future, it looks like this is going to be the home of an expanded option program, and that there would be prerequisites required for it to become a neighborhood program as we currently configure them. So again, that is something that was sorted through by that group, and I just really appreciate that work. It was significant, detailed, and a good tilling of the soil for the current work. So, and thank you for doing that as well.
Ms. O'Grady?
Yeah. Thank you. This is an important step forward. The committee will be looking at what happens in a neighborhood that has welcomed the opportunity to have more high school seats. And so I want to thank everyone for their participation ahead of time for helping to develop that building and also the site, surrounding the building. There are a lot of parts on this property. There's an elementary school, there's the continuing high school program, and there's a library. So there's a lot of thought that's going to have to go into this BLPC, maybe more than any other BLPC I've seen to date. So there is a lot of work, and I look forward to seeing what comes forth. Thank you.
Ms. Van Doren?
Sorry, I wanted to make one more comment. I appreciate some of the revision in which we emphasize the need to replace the studios and workshop areas that will be taken down as part of the construction. I really am very, very focused and want to be supportive of and continue to support those programs at the Career Center that are used by the other high school students, as well as Arlington Tech and the PEP program and many of those programs, because those are pathways for some of our kids, and we can't lose those. And as you know, I'd like us to bring back HVAC one day.
If I may, HVAC controls are what we really need.
I know, and we'll have this argument about the high-tech jobs versus the low-tech jobs. We need both. And I think those people who are best at the controls also know how the systems work. So
Exactly.
we can have that conversation.
Exactly.
We need both. We need transportation planners and we need bus drivers. We need, and crossing guards. So we need them all. And I appreciate that the Career Center does all of them, and I'm steadfastly committed to continuing to do that. I have a child who is the product of the Career Center and majoring in college in something she learned at the Career Center, and I appreciate that and want to maintain those options for our kids. The other point I wanted to ask about from you, I know that we're very focused in all of our buildings to make sure we build buildings that are flexible. So if in the future this school and this structure were to evolve over time with our growing population and have neighborhood seats. This isn't so highly specialized that couldn't happen. We could evolve that way with other, as stated in the Career Center Working Group, other components, but the building itself is being built flexibly for the educational programs with some obviously very specific parts of it for the career programs. Am I correct?
Absolutely. And that is actually why we're able to do the ed specs now without knowing specifically what the program is.
That's excellent. And we did do that at the Ed Center, building that building so it could really
Absolutely.
be any secondary program.
Absolutely. And with some conversion, it could be an elementary or middle school program too.
Great.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you, colleagues. Seeing that there are no other, oh, I'm sorry, Dr. Kim. Okay, seeing that there are no other comments, we are now ready to vote. All in favor of the motion as presented?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Motion passes 5-0. Thank you,
Thank
Mr.
you.
Chadwick. We appreciate that. And thank you, Mr. Black, for being here. We look forward to your leadership in chairing the BLPC. And I want to remind everyone that the BLPC meetings are public meetings. We will now hear our three information items. The first is the school board's proposed 2019-2020 action plan. And I think I'm supposed to present this, but I don't have the clicker. Okay, thank you. Thank you, Ms. Elliott. I appreciate that. Okay. So for those of you who were able to tune into our work session last week, we did discuss the draft of the school board action plan for this coming school year, and there were some changes that we discussed. And so you will see an updated school board action plan from the one that was discussed at the work session last Tuesday. And you will note that we have bolded hire a superintendent and noted that is our primary focus, while we have a lot of work that continues and that is prioritized by staff and the school board. We did want to remind the community that hiring a superintendent will be our primary focus and our first priority. You'll note under leadership, we are also expecting to hire a chief diversity officer and a partnership coordinator, and these are two positions that were adopted in last year's budget, and that came from a lot of prior work and different recommendations. We are in our operational planning. You will note that we note the instructional program pathways as it's work that we've been working on for 2 years, as was presented today, and that, as we have noted, will help plan for boundary processes, programs, adjustments, and CIP priorities. Again, we are adopting a CIP in June of this school year. And we also wanted to ensure that We had highlighted here the community engagement on boundary processes and program moves. That was also discussed at last week's work session. So if you want to learn more about some of the work that's coming with planning for boundary changes, please take a look at that. You can find that work session online. We plan to monitor progress on the Read and Education Center, which are both scheduled to open September 2021. We're going to adopt the concept design for Career Center Expansion Project, adopt the fiscal year 21 budget, and adopt the fiscal year 21 through 30 capital improvement plan. Under new policies and policy revisions, on the left, you will note new policies that will be coming forth this year. And then on the right, are the policies that are up for revision. You will note instructional policies. There were many instructional policies that we're going to be reviewing. It's not all of our instructional policies. And again, if you have an opportunity to watch our work session of last week, we did take some time to review our policy review calendar and go over the policies that we will be reviewing this year. And finally, on the right, you will notice a box that states focus on student success and well-being. And the first three are performance objectives from our strategic plan that we are going to prioritize this year. Other strategic plan performance objectives will be worked on, but these are the ones that the school board, alongside the ELT executive leadership team and the superintendent, will be focusing on, and they are increased achievement and progress towards eliminating opportunity gaps, improvement in mental health measures and access to mental health resources, and all students identify a school-based adult who supports and encourages their academic and personal growth. We discussed the three sub-bullets on the bottom at our work session as well, and we refined them to really ensure that they were reflective of some highlights on how we would support the three performance objectives, monitor rather, the three performance objectives that we have highlighted here. And the first one is tune the strategic plan performance objectives. That'll be coming later this year. Monitor academic progress and well-being through data, briefing reports, monitoring items, and work sessions. And consider steps to implement recommendations from the evaluation of services for students with special needs and English learners and the English learner DOJ settlement. We do have both evaluations have been happening over the last year or so, and we expect to receive recommendations and report out on those evaluations this fall. So do we have any speakers? Okay, thank you. Colleagues, do you have any comments or questions on the school board action plan? Okay, great. Thank you. This item will come back for action at our September 19th school board meeting, and they just turned it off. I was going to show you a timeline, but that's okay. You don't have, this is fine that the presentation for our next information item is up. And I will just note that we plan to adopt the school board action plan on September 19th, and then thereafter it will come forth in the interim superintendent's updates as our practice was last year, and she will guide us through what is happening. And if there's anything on the superintendent search, that is probably something that myself or one of my colleagues on the board will present on. So thank you all, and we will next we will hear the proposed new elementary school at Reed final design and construction contract. Ms. Johnson.
So I'd like to turn it over to Mr. Chadwick to do the introduction, please.
Thank you, Ms. Johnson. I would like to introduce Ben Bergen, who is the Assistant Director of Design and Construction, and Wick Knox, who is our architect for both Discovery, Fleet, and now Reed. Mr. Chambers and I decided that we really ought to have the people who did the majority of the work on the project be the ones to present this to you. Just like many things we've discussed this evening, there is a huge amount of work that has gone into this project so far, and also a lot more to do. Many, many people have been involved in this. I see our Building Level Planning Committee Chair, Hans Bowman, over there. Public Facilities Review Committee Chair, James Schroll, was not able to attend this evening, but many, many, many people have been involved in this. Mr. Knox has a huge team of people that support him, and we have a large internal team, teaching and learning, and many other departments have had a huge role in this. So I pass it over to Mr. Bergen, who looks like he's going to start.
Thank you, Mr. Chadwick. Sitting at the beginning of the meeting, I couldn't help but reflect celebrating school openings. At the same time, we were busy this summer preparing to reach this point, which is we're right up to the edge of breaking ground on the next elementary school. So that's what we're here to talk about this evening. Mr. Chadwick gave an excellent introduction. Unfortunately, I'm just one of the many team members that put a lot of work into this. So I just want to acknowledge, before we get going, BMDO, the architect, Gil Bain, who will be the constructor, the builder, and CBR Heary, who will be the construction manager, and especially our project manager, APS project manager, Aji Bola Robinson. Wanted to acknowledge all of his great efforts for the project as well. So beginning each public meeting, we had this slide up to sort of remind ourselves of the big picture. It identifies the main goals of the project, including capacity, timeline, and financing. So we include it here just as a reminder to keep the main thing, and that's why our strategic plan is on there, because we're doing it to support APS's strategic plan and the importance of learning. Also identified on this slide is a link to the project website, which has all the materials from the many public meetings, including the different times that this project has been before the school board and county board. This schedule has been fairly consistent since we started this project in October of 2017, two years ago. So at this point, ready to break ground, we sort of represent and reflecting back on a 2-year public engagement process that was deeply involved a number of different meetings and actions by both the school board and county board. So we're sort of basically in the middle of a 4-year project where we finished the design, the pre-construction phase, and we're going into the construction phase. So as was mentioned, we had a number of different opportunities for public engagement that included a number of joint public committee meetings. Mr. Chadwick acknowledged the work of Hans Baumann and the BLPC, James Schroll and the PFRC. Each of those chairs did a masterful job of navigating through this process. And there was, the images on the screen there sort of represent some of the workshops and the efforts that the group sort of came together, and it was very much the design was a result of those engagement periods. And we had a number of different options with that, as well as going to various county commissions and numerous discussions with interested stakeholders in the neighborhood, specifically the Westover Retail, the Farmers Market, the library branch, who is within the same physical building as the Reed School. And just to emphasize the last line there, we've been fortunate to have broad excitement and community support for the project. Really, I'd say unprecedented in my tenure with APS, where the committee sort of came together and emphatically sort of represented what they felt was an optimal consensus of balancing a number of different competing interests. And with that, I'll pass the podium off to Mr. Wick Knox to explain the project design.
Thanks, Ben. What a week, huh? Ben can tell you I called him Tuesday night and said, "Congratulations, now let's get back to work." So here we are. All right. So as I told the joint BLPC and PFRC the last week or recently, it's like, I wish I had something new to show you, but I don't. And that's kind of the point of these meetings, to show you that what was approved at schematic design is what we're in fact building and doing. So I'm going to walk through this as quick as I can and stop in a few points to address some issues that I know are going to probably be discussed some tonight. So here's the existing site plan. And you can see how we are changing that. So I'm just going to flip back and forth between those two a few times so you can see that. And it's important to emphasize all of the different components that we balance during this process to make this site work, right? You got to have enough adequate on-site parking. You got to have room to queue 30 cars on site, so cars at pickup time are not backing up onto public streets. We got to preserve as many trees as possible. We have to stay off the sledding hill. We have to keep the playing fields as big as possible. We have to deal with significant stormwater issues. We have to have accessible pathways all the way around the site. We have to have the smallest footprint we can. And by the way, we have to get a school for 725 students in here, right? All of those interests compete against each other. You have a little more of one, you get a little less of the other. And I think that the process to date has been great in balancing those and getting us to a position that's really good. And that kind of is reflected in the stats here. So as Ben said, it was almost unanimous support for this one scheme. We call it the integrated scheme during the design meetings. That really kind of tears down the one-story part of the building and puts a 4 and a 2-story building as tight as we can up against it, right? So if you look at the stats on the impervious area, before there was 52,000 square feet of building footprint, and now we're going to 58, 6,000 square feet of new footprint. That's incredible, and that's why this scheme has the broad support that it does. The biggest area where we are increasing is really just the parking. So overall, a really, really light touch on the site for a major new project. The parking is 124 spots. That's right at what the traffic study recommended. We were originally at 9 more than that, but at the use permit approval, the county said it's very important that we have an accessible path across the back of the site that connects to Washington Boulevard. The current path, there's a path there now, but it's steeper than what is considered accessible by ADA. So in order to make that work, we had to take some parking spots away and put some more trees in. But that's the only difference. There are 74 bike racks. There's Class 1 bike storage for 16 bikes with 2 showers, and then the 30 spots to queue on the site, and then the buses will drop off on the curb, up to 7 buses. So, tree impacts. There's a lot of information, a lot of words on this slide, but the summary of it is that we did a very detailed tree inventory. We have a certified arborist on the civil engineer staff that we surveyed not only all the trees on the site, but also trees that were on the property line or just over the property line into neighbors' yards that potentially could be impacted by a building. So a comprehensive tree survey was done. And then from there, based on the condition of the trees and the schemes that we did, we went through and working with urban forestry and our arborist, kind of figured out which trees would need to come down as part of the project. And balance that with all of the issues that I brought up on the site plan, right? Utilities, site improvements, universal access, building location. All of these things were carefully reviewed at all the BLPC and PFRC meetings. All the major trees were identified in a slide in our May 2018 meeting. And Arlington County staff has also reviewed all these in conjunction with us, made some modifications during the permit approval process, which I'll explain. And then we had the meeting on September 16th that I was referring to earlier. So I'm going to linger a little bit on this slide because I know that a lot of people want to talk about this. So what you see on this slide is basically an overlay of the trees that would be coming out in pink. And then the trees that remain with a leader and a tag with a box in white text, okay? So overall, if you just, looking at this one portion of the site on this hill, and all of these trees were the trees that were part of the survey by the certified arborist to determine what their condition is, right? So if you look at this, there are some trees, I don't think the pointer works on this. There's some trees up here. There's a group of trees right there. Those are the trees that the urban forester came back and said, hey, there's a group here of cedars and mulberries that are small and in poor condition, and the health of the forest would be better if we thinned those out. So those were added during the permitting process. Those trees could stay if someone was attached to them. And then other trees that are down here where our fire lane is and our basketball courts clearly need to come out. And some screening trees right here have to come out in the process of routing the utilities around the building. So what's left there are 5 trees, 5 major trees. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. In contrast to that, 42 trees remain. Those are all the trees that are in the white text. So Those are all the trees that make up the canopy. Again, the trees on APS property, right on the property line and right over the property line, but all the trees that make up the canopy that the neighbors looking out their backyard have a view of, right? So a significant number of trees that are staying. So let's talk a little bit about, I want to go through each one and tell you exactly why. So no one likes to cut down trees. It pains us to do any of it, and the one that pains me the most is this 42-inch maple right here. Now, there's no way that tree can survive if we put the building where the community told us that we had to put the building, right? Because this corner of the building, there is a sanitary line and a sewer line that have to route, and they just barely make it with fall, that route around that building. Those things are pretty deep in the ground. We have to excavate between 15 and 16 feet right next to the roots of that tree. There's no way it's going to survive. So that building can't go where everybody wants it and keep that tree. So that's one of them, all right? The next ones I want to talk about are this mulberry tree right here. So that was of these 5 trees, that was the only one that got a poor to fair condition assessment from the arborist, right? That tree comes out because the new grade that we have to create is significantly lower than where the grade is now. We have to dig out quite a bit. Now, why do we have to do that? Well, it has to do with creating play areas that are needed by the school that are flat enough to be accessible by everybody. So, this is our building here. This is our gym. Now, we intentionally took the gym and placed it there because it allowed us to take the building and basically drive it about 10 feet into the hillside, right? So what that did is it reduces the visual impacts of a 4-story building. On the back side of the building, for all of these houses up here, it looks like a 3-story building. That was an intentional move to reduce the impact of the building, right? So when you do that, you drive this bottom floor down into the ground, right? Well, and the gym has to be on this side because this site continues to slope down. So over here, the gym would be about 6 feet up in the air, right? And we need multiple ways out because it's an assembly space. So it's here. So then now you've got to be able to move out of this gym, and you've got to move and get access to turf play areas, hardscape play courts, and a playground. And it has to be at an elevation level where anyone, regardless of how you move about, can get to all of those areas off of the gym. And so all of this regrading is about accommodating that and making that happen. So all these moves are because we have to go and change the grade. We have to dig into the earth a little bit and change the grade of what's there now to accommodate the spaces that we need for the school. So stormwater is an issue, right? We talked about that. So every single house you see on that slide has surface runoff stormwater that runs onto the APS site, right? So we have to deal with that. We know there's a big flood issue, so everyone knows about the flood event. The courtyard became a fountain during the flood event in June. So we have 9 different bioretention areas, right? And these are the major ones here. We have already pushed those about as far over this way and took space from the field. They eventually dump into a large 84-inch pipe that runs down the middle of the site, right? Well, we can't put them right over the pipe because they need to soak water into the earth. And if we push them any further this way, the problem becomes even worse, right? So we've kind of gone as far that way as we can. And then what's left is our playground areas. Now, another aspect of the project that was very stressed by this board quite a bit, a big charge of ours, was universal design. Everyone should be able to get around the site in the same way everywhere. And the county board emphasized that as well with the addition of the walkway to Washington Boulevard, right? So there is no way to get from here to there in a straight line without it becoming more than a 5% slope, right? Now, why is a 5% slope important? Because it's not a ramp. It's an inclined surface, right? It's an inclined surface that everybody can take Otherwise, you run into situations where you have zigzag ramps. Every time you do a ramp, you can only go 30 feet, then you have to have a landing. The whole thing gets longer. You have rails everywhere. You have people taking different routes to move across the site. The other benefit that's really important to me is that kids are going to be playing all over this hill and all in nature as they should be, right? So because it is not a ramp, it's just, I mean, it's almost impossible to tell the slope on it. A railing is not required. That's a good thing because these kids are going to come barreling down the hill, and not having to crash into a railing is a really, really smart design move from my perspective as a school designer. So when you combine all those things, this mulberry has got to come out because of the grade change. That leaves 3 trees. 2 red maples, here and here, that are in excellent health. They're adolescent trees. They're 12 to 18 inches. They're about that big around, that are in the route of that pathway, that are not going to survive construction, and it's smart to take them out. And then that really leaves this silver maple up here, which is a big tree. It's 54 inches. Now, one of the things that we're going to do on the 16th of this month is that we're going to go out and we're going to stake all this again. We're going to stake the limits of disturbance. We're going to stake where this pathway goes. We're going to stake the circle so people understand and show them how far down that has to go from where it is now, and also mark all the trees and have a meeting on site. There is a possibility that that silver maple up top of the screen could survive what we're doing, and we're going to look at that and see if that's a possibility. So I know I'm belaboring this point, but I know it's important because there's a lot of people here that want to speak on it. So, you know, I think APS and the design staff has taken every care that we can to make all this work and reduce the number of tree loss to an absolute minimum, absolute minimum. So we're talking about 5 trees that come out in an area that has 42 that remain. Okay, now onto the building. So these are the updated renderings from that reflect the final design. No big changes here, as you should expect. So this is the view from basically the intersection of Washington and McKinley. So you see the library in the foreground, and then the 4-story building sticking up behind in the background in a complementary red brick. So coming further down McKinley, as it turns the corner and becomes 18th, looking at the building, we kind of have a 2-story connector to the existing building and then a 4-story building above it. We were trying to get that 4-story building as much as we could kind of in the middle of the site to reduce its impact in terms of its massing. This is kind of zooming up a little bit so you can see the courtyard, the entry courtyard. A lot of time was spent talking about how this entry courtyard should work and where the pathway should go. The problem is, you know, right now, if you go to the school's 7 feet up from the curb, right? And so one of the things that I don't like about it now is there's a bunch of steps, but then if you're in a wheelchair, you got to go all the way over there and all the way back up. And those are the exact kind of things that we're trying to avoid in this design. So here, you start at a point where you can either take the stairs, and stairs are important because they help people get out of buildings quickly in emergencies, or you start in the same point and go around this nice courtyard, around bioretention zones, up to the front assembly space of the school. This is an aerial view showing the potential for PV, photovoltaic solar panels on the roof. That's been a very careful design consideration for this building, so we wanted it to have the same opportunities as Discovery and Fleet, where if this board decides, you could go into a power purchase agreement and essentially rent your roof in exchange for power. And the building should be set up, if our building performance is good, to hit net zero with a mixture of high performance and medium performance panels. So we're excited about that possibility. This is the view as you're walking down the sidewalk on 18th Street. So that's the tallest kind of impact of the building, where it's at its tallest, because again, even from the first floor, you drop down about another 6 feet as you come down that side. So this is just looking up a little bit, and you can see some of the steps that we have taken to make all this work. There's some bioretention basins right here. Well, the only way we can make those work is on the 3rd and 4th floor. We cantilever out the building. It's these pop-outs here, they stick out like 12, 14 feet. So we could have space down here for bioretention, but still build over it, right? So those are, kind of show the extent of which we went and balanced these things. In the process, they become kind of fun little frames with color pops We're going to have some colored glass, kind of similar to what was done at McKinley. And here, so this is the view from the softball, the smaller softball field, and some of the bioretention areas, and the play areas beyond that with trees. I failed to mention on the tree slide, sorry to go back to this topic, that in its place, around this area, we're planting a significant number of tulip poplars, which is pretty much the tallest deciduous tree in Arlington County. The walkway is going to be lined with willow oaks, which will be gorgeous. And then along the top where we do have those trees, those 3 trees I talked about, 4 American elm trees. So really tall, significant canopy trees. Some of these were actually smaller. So those were red buds at schematic. And the county said, hey, let's put more canopy trees there. And so that's somewhat reflected in this rendering, although that's hard to get right in a rendering. So look, this is looking up at that play area. There are, I think there's a lot of, just like the numbers of trees that are coming down, there's a lot of misunderstanding out here about this thing. I know there's been communication going around saying that we're putting an amphitheater in for 725 students. That is not anywhere close to being true. There is an outdoor classroom that you see right here, which could maybe take 2 classes. So 45 people, right? Maybe. And there has never been any attempt or design goal of trying to have the entire school in an amphitheater. That just is not a part of the project. But again, you can kind of see the extent with some of the retaining walls that are required and some of the grading that we have to do to get this right. Originally, we had the basketball courts further out, and some of the neighbors said, hey, I'm a little worried about the potential noise and being loud. Can you get those in closer? That turned out to be a really good suggestion because we were able to combine the fire lane, the hardscape that's required for the fire lane with the play courts, and brought that in, and we actually ended up with less retaining walls and less regrading by doing that. So this is really the smart place for the playground to go. This is the view from Madison, looking at the area where we wanted to make sure that the loading dock was treated with care and screened properly. And then the next couple of slides, I think, go into the interior of the building. But all of the things that you guys have touched on tonight on various topics drove the design here. A lot of care was taken into agility and adaptability. I'll show you on the floor plans how we arranged that so we could reconfigure this school to avoid trailers on the site one day. Safety and security, of course, is a primary concern on everything we do. Universal design, the trick to universal design is that, it's going beyond ADA, but it's kind of, there's no definition of what that is, right? So we have done everything we could throughout the building and the site to promote that concept. And then the sustainability, hopefully this will be a zero carbon impact, carbon neutral building that will clean and capture a lot of stormwater and fix some of the flooding problems that happen in the Westover neighborhood. So a little more about the sustainability. We're expecting a maximum energy use of 19. That's to give you, I won't go into what that means, but to give you some perspective, Discovery operates at about a 15, between a 15 and a 16. Discovery is starting its 5th year, and before this school year is over, that building will have saved you $500,000 in utility costs. So some significant reasons to pursue this stuff. Which is why we have some of the highest standards possible in some of the building construction and the air tightness and the amount of insulation that's in it. We're designed to achieve a minimum of LEED silver. That's a use permit requirement. Most likely the project will be LEED gold. We'll see. And then, as I mentioned, it's zero energy ready. So should the school board decide to have solar panels on the roof, we should be able to produce enough electricity, and we should use as little energy so that we could offset it and be zero or positive. And then, of course, we'll have an energy dashboard with building graphics like we've done at other schools to put data in the hands of kids, and which we know that they do amazing things with. So these are some new renderings because we didn't really have much on the interior before. So this is the main dining commons, the cafeteria. It's on the middle floor of the building to reduce travel time to it. And it's broken up into distinct seating areas that you can kind of see. That also helps kind of reduce the noise that happens there. A lot of different shifts in ceiling planes for that same reason. a lot of natural light. And this is really going to be the kind of community room in the school that we're pretty excited about. This is the gym. The challenge here is somewhat similar to Wilson, where you've got to have a gym and then you stack classrooms over it. So we took a lot of care on the design of that ceiling. It's actually multiple layers of gypsum board to reduce sound transmission. And you'll also notice that all of the basketball goals are wall mounted versus things that hang down from the ceiling, because that metal transfers sound, right? But should be a pretty fun full-size gym, high school-sized gym. This is one of the breakout areas for kindergarten or first grade. So, part of making this thing work, we squeeze this building as much as we could possibly squeeze it. And so we really looked for areas where we could take a corridor and then just add 7-8 feet to it and make a little breakout space, because we know how these spaces are so important to teaching and learning that goes on. And so likewise, for the top 3 floors, we have classrooms that are clustered around with either sliding glass doors or garage doors that can be easily opened or closed to allow those classrooms to expand out and have breakout spaces, allow teachers to collaborate and kind of break down the teacher-student ratio by having some students working in a group project that the teacher can watch while he or she's working with the other. Something else that we did, we're always looking to improve the stuff we did. So, we're always thinking about lockdown and security. And we opened a school in Charlottesville 2 weeks ago, which was the first time we had experimented with this, and it's turned out to work out quite well, where all of your schools now have Mecco shades, where there's a chain and you pull it down, and right? Well, that takes a lot of time. And so this school will have heavy duty curtains. They're what's called a walk draw curtain, because you grab a pole or a tag and you walk across, shut it. So these classrooms can be shut down much, much faster with an opaque cloth, and we're really excited about that. So you can kind of see that illustrated behind that closed garage door on the left side of that picture. We're always looking for ways to make the building a teaching tool. So the entryway is going to have suspended spheres that will be in scale to each other in terms of the size, the volume of the planet that represents the solar system. So that curved yellow thing you see on the wall, that would be the size of the sun in relation to, you can easily see Saturn and Neptune and Jupiter there, but all 7 planets. And then the lighting on that sun is going to change depending on how the building's doing, right? So if we have PVs one day, if we are producing more electricity than we use, it's going to be a whitish yellow color. If we are using more electricity than we produce, it's going to be an orange, like the sunset color. And so the kids are going to be able to see that and have visual clues as to how the building is performing. Really simple, little low-cost ways that we can make the building teach. So these are the floor plans. So you can see the gym that I was discussing earlier that's kind of shoved into that hill. That hatch pattern represents earth that we're digging into. So our whole site slopes from the top of the screen down to the bottom of the screen. So entryway is in the middle here in the courtyard. This is admin. This is the current gym, and it's going to become the library. We're reusing the classrooms that are there now for pre-K, and then an art room on this floor. The clinic, PTOT, kindergarten, and the gym. Moving up, you have the double height space of the library, 3 music rooms and an art room, so we can have an arts suite. Basically, the building that's going to remain and be renovated is kind of an arts area and a pre-K area. This is the cafeteria with a kitchen behind it. That's the double height space of the gym, and then this is first grade. The 3rd and 4th floors are stacked evenly and are identical to each other, and this is where it's easiest to point out the kind of flexibility that we're trying to put in the building. We were really careful about where we put columns and pipes in the building, because those don't move very easily, right? So we kept them all on exterior walls or walls that we knew were core walls. So for example, you're looking at 5 classrooms per grade right here with 2 small group instructions and 2 offices for specialty instructors. You could very easily take all of these walls out and add a classroom. So 1, 2, 3, 4 new classrooms. You could also do the same thing on the first 2 floors. So trying to be smart about this and building in flexibility so a quick summer renovation can prevent a trailer from going on the site, or I'm sorry, a relocatable from going on the site. Potentially, you could do that for the top classroom as well. So you could put 2 more full-size classrooms on each of these floor plates that you see before you. So potentially 6 full-size classrooms. Of course, you're losing the process. You are losing something. You're losing the small group instructions. But it gives us the ability to be flexible. Also, these areas the walls could come down. It could become a larger classroom. Who knows? You know, the only thing we know about education is that it's going to change, right? So we want to try to be on top of that. I think that concludes my part.
Okay, so the last section of our presentation this evening is dealing with the cost, and in particular the construction contract for the project. So, you know, several times we've had this project before you, and the board has given staff specific direction about reducing costs or managing costs wisely. So just a couple of comments on the strategies that staff use to sort of follow through with that charge. So the first thing listed on there is stay on schedule. It was extremely important for us. The schedule has remained firm since we started 2 years ago, and we very much like to begin construction so that it can stay predictable and as we've determined. Because any modifications to the schedule do have cost impacts related to either accelerating work or escalating material costs. One other strategy that we implemented was to simplify both the project phasing and the permit. You know, some of the projects that we just recently opened had multiple phases and multiple permits, which added complexity and cost to the job. So we've reduced those. We have 1 phase of the project and we have 1 permit. And as the design became more developed, we could more accurately estimate our owner costs as well. So those have been sort of updated as part of this presentation. The next item is, because we're using a construction manager at risk, Gilbane has been our partner for well over a year now on the project. That allows us to engage them to utilize their expertise to the maximum as far as contacting their subcontractor partners that weigh in on design decisions. They help WIC sort of give feedback on material costs, the way that the labor market is shaping things. And we actually made decisions based on that input, either changing exterior materials or changing different type of construction methods to respond to that. The next is using design alternatives which act as a buffer to help us mitigate cost increases or changes. And lastly, all of our partners in this project have recently worked on different projects that have opened this past Tuesday. And all of them were very eager to apply lessons learned that they've used from each of those projects, including APS staff. So we've had ample opportunities to apply things that we have learned from very recent, very fresh experiences to this project. So we shared with you a little bit in the past our approach to cost estimating. So just as a refresher, at each major phase of the project, we developed 2 cost estimates. The chart on the bottom of the screen identify those 2 estimates and how they've trended through project history the last 2 years. The very top line of that chart is a maximum construction cost. That's the target, the sort of the obligation that we set for our team to design to. And then there's 2 estimates, one prepared by the architect and engineer, and then the other prepared by our construction manager at risk. So we track these things very carefully at these milestones, and they help us make decisions about either changing scope or removing scope to keep us on target. So the result of these efforts, in sort of some dollar terms, is that because we were able to be efficient and stay on schedule in pre-construction, we were able to save about $400,000 in expenses that we sort of thought we might have to spend, but because we finished on time, we didn't have to. So those are sort of unused contingency funds within our pre-construction phase. And then secondly, the proposed construction contract which I'll address a little bit more specifically on the next slide, is approximately $80,000 less than the maximum target. So we've realized both savings on the sort of the owner cost side and savings on the construction cost side as well. And so what we're recommending, and you'll see this reflected on the next staff, is that we sort of set aside those savings, keep them in the project, and increase our project contingencies as a result. So the proposed construction contract that you'll see on the right-hand side of the screen is a little over $42.6 million. The balance of the costs are sort of categorized as owner soft costs and contingency costs, which total a little over $12.3 million. And that is where those savings that I spoke to on the previous slide are sort of lumped into that, to those costs. On the left-hand side of this slide is the proposed project funding. So there's not really anything exciting to share with that. It matches identically what was approved in the last CIP. One specific note to just call your attention to on note number 3 is that we're still working with Arlington County on identifying this and confirming really the specific their contribution for the jointly funded items, and that will be complete before we ask the board to take action at the next meeting. So just a couple of comments on the next steps. Mr. Knox mentioned that on September 16, we will host a meeting on site with any interested party to sort of talk about the tree removal. Prior to that meeting, our design team will be identifying, will be marking the trees that are slated for removal. We'll be identifying major site components so folks can sort of help visualize how that site will be transformed. If it's not on our project website yet, that date will be advertised there very soon, and we'll be sending out communications to the BLPC, the Civic Association presidents, and all the interested folks in the emails that we've received. So we'll be contacting those, identifying of that particular meeting. So our goal for the construction period is to come back to you in 2 weeks to receive an action and an approval for us to break ground on the project so that we can stay on schedule for a September 21 school opening. I know that we're very grateful to our partners at achieving the school openings that we did on Tuesday. I think everybody would like to have a little bit more time. So getting a school board action at the next meeting would afford us the greatest opportunity to have some buffer prior to the school year to help us finish everything that we intend to do before staff and students arrive. So a couple of specific comments related to construction itself. The entire APS site will be unavailable during the construction period. I think there's I can't recall the date, but there's sort of a farewell picnic that the Civic Association is hosting as part of a saying so long for now to some of the field space. Just an important note that the Westover Branch Library will continue to be operational and functional throughout construction, as will the Westover Farmers Market. And during construction, beginning very soon, we will be providing monthly updates that sort of identify work completed and work sort of expected in the upcoming weeks. And then, of course, we look forward to the school opening in 2021. So just to summarize the recommendations, so we've shown you the final design, and it's identified in Exhibits A through E. We're asking that the board approve the specific aspects, reaffirming the basic project criteria that we had on the introductory slide. We'd like approval of the site plan and the development conditions. This is a new request because we found that it would allow us to do administrative activities associated to the use permit, like property transfers and the like, without having to come back and receive specific approval at each instance. So that's why that language is there. Of course, we want you to approve the final design that Mr. Knox beautifully and eloquently described, the total budget, total funding as in the exhibit, and then an important one is the construction contract award to Gilbane in just over the $42.6 million. And lastly, a transfer of the $2.75 million from the capital reserve to project funding for APS's contribution for the jointly funded items. And thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Knox and Mr. Bergen, for being here to present to us. We really appreciate that. Ms. Elliott, do we have any speakers?
Yes, ma'am. We have 10 speakers today.
Thank you.
First, we begin with our Reed Expansion Project BLCP Chair, Mr. Hans Baumann.
And Mr. Baumann, we generally give our speakers 2 minutes, but because you are the chair, we're going to allow you to read the letter from that you're representing.
I'll be as efficient as I can. Thank you. Good evening, Madam Chair, school board members, Ms. Johnson. Happy New Year. My name is Hans Baumann. I am the chair of the Reed Expansion BLPC. As you know, the BLPC was formed over 2 years ago to explore how to best locate a new elementary school at the Reed site. This group of 30 citizens and staff held about a dozen meetings along with the Public Facilities Review Committee. The PFRC is a county board appointed committee of additional about a dozen and a half citizens whose charge is to, quote, ensure that the highest quality of land use, planning, design, transportation planning, and other community aspects are incorporated into civic projects. Last week, on the 28th, the Reed BLPC met jointly again with the PFRC and members of the public to review the final design presented to you. The BLPC supports the design as presented and looks forward to the school board's approval and on-time initiation of construction. There was some heated public testimony during our meeting regarding the removal of certain mature trees on the northern part of the site. The removal and replacement of some trees on this hillside was an expected component of the integrated scheme, which received unanimous, strong support from both the BLPC and the county board-charged PFRC. We continue to support the current design of the site despite these unfortunate tree impacts. Stepping back, the BLPC and the PFRC together went through an extensive year-long design process with competing objectives. The decision to build onto the current footprint and extend into that northern hillside with its mature trees was made in early 2018 as part of the concept design phase. Intentional trade-offs were made between competing interests, including educational goals, field space, traffic impacts, accessibility, cost, public use, parking, and yes, existing tree canopy. The so-called integrated design we crafted represents the best of Arlington's inclusive processes, which gives representatives of all these interests and more a seat at the table, an understanding of the interplay and trade-offs, and a voice in shaping the final outcome. Our process included vocal advocates of both open space and tree canopy. Specific trees are evaluated by county arborists as described, with consideration given to tree species and lifespan. In the end, we made compromises across all interest areas. These considerations were detailed in past presentations and letters long available on the APS website. The BLPC strongly supports the current design, which reflects a careful, thoughtful balance of these competing interests. Adjusting any one component now will necessarily mean adjustments and compromises to other areas of the design. The expensive and time-consuming BLC-PFRC process was entirely worth the investment, precisely because we reviewed all the impacts from a wide variety of perspectives. Allowing any one set of voices to derail an inclusive process at this late stage threatens to invalidate the thoughtful work of both committees, would unfairly impact other design choices, and undermines the very civic engagement model which APS has worked so hard towards in the past few years. The combined PFRC-BLPC process demonstrates the best of the Arlington way. Relatedly, I'd like to commend APS for its communication work and the Engage with APS portion of the website, which allows any interested party to learn all about any current major initiative and find ways to engage and shape outcomes. The new elementary school at Reed has been well advertised and detailed there throughout this design process. The posted May 2018 presentation clearly details the impacts to the existing tree canopy. I wish we didn't have to take down any trees to build this school. I have fought personally to preserve trees in my own neighborhood as well. But our committee made intentional trade-offs between open fields and building into a wooded hillside when it chose the integrated design. It's important to note that most of the trees on this hillside will in fact be preserved, and of course that APS will be overplanting replacement trees. Finally, I'd like to thank the school board again for its creative work with the county to prioritize and fund this project. The project budget cap was extended to $55 million to allow the integrated design to move forward. And thank you again for your support of open engagement processes like this one. They're not easy, they're not cheap, but they really do work. We are pleased with the outcome of our design process, support the final design as presented, and look forward to supporting it staying on schedule to welcome students in the fall of 2021. Finally, and this is not part of my prepared remarks, I do want to make just a very brief note for everyone about value engineering, which is a term I've heard a lot. And I hope you've all had a chance to tour our new school buildings, which are beautiful. But I hope you also realize that we all realize that value engineering doesn't mean getting the same thing for less money. It means getting less because you do less. And I just am a little bit anxious about that term getting used as a euphemism for cutting things out of the budget. And you can see that in the form of less finished floors in certain buildings. You can see it in the form of no sinks in kindergarten classrooms, which is the instructional standard. That's value engineering. Anyway, thank you very much. Thank you for indulging me. And finally, I do actually have a note from James Schroll. He was not able to be here tonight. He did want to say me just a couple real quick words. He is the chair of the PFRC. He wanted me to relate that the PFRC supports the final design of the Reed Elementary School. He wanted me to reiterate that, quote, both committees went through a long process and did consider trade-offs. It would not be appropriate to relitigate these issues. That being said, he would encourage APS staff to work with nearby neighbors and the county arborist to see if any additional efforts can be made to try to save existing mature trees during construction. I think he would be pleased to know there's a meeting next week with our neighbors. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Baumann, and thank you for your leadership as BLPC chair on this project. We are very grateful, and please extend our thanks to Mr. Scholl as well. And thank you for presenting tonight on behalf of the committee. Ms. Elliott, if you could continue with speakers. Thank you.
I will now call up speakers 3 at a time, so we move a little more quickly. If you could line up next to right where Mr. Bergen's sitting, and then come forward to the mic when it's your turn. The next 3 are Christopher Clarkson, Suzanne Sundberg, and Kathleen Trainer. It looks like my timer is not displaying over there, but it is over here. And I'll point out, our timer is not working on that side, but it is displaying over on this side if you want to check how much time you have left.
We'll somehow get through it.
Okay.
I'm Chris Clarkson. My home of the past 30 years or so looks out on the Reed School property. There were some interesting anticipations in the presentations you've just heard about trees. So that's the topic that I think most of us are looking at. Arlington Schools is poised to cut down 6 large mature trees at the Reed School and bulldoze the better part of the hillside on which they stand. And the question is why? And it's to accommodate a sidewalk and a large, round playground and amphitheater. He didn't like the term amphitheater, but that's kind of what it looks like. The alignment of the sidewalk, which is the real issue, the alignment, runs around the perimeter of this amphitheater that you could see in those charts that were presented earlier, right through the current position of the trees. One of the features of this amphitheater, a retaining wall that doubles as seating, will be required to shore up the sidewalk and what is left of the hillside where the trees had been. Bulldozing nearly half the hillside will be required to prepare for construction of the amphitheater, retaining wall, and sidewalk. And the question is, do we really need a coliseum in Westover at the schoolyard? Furthermore, there's no provision in the plans for new trees that would eventually restore the canopy, despite what you saw in those renderings and despite what you heard. There's nothing that I've seen on the plans that would restore the canopy on the hillside and restore the visual buffer that now exists. So that the renderings that you saw are a bit misleading on that count. There are alternatives for the alignment. The alignment is the issue of the sidewalk. The configuration of the playground and amphitheaters is constrained by the location of stormwater basins. Would the need for stormwater basins be reduced if parking lots were constructed using porous pavement rather than asphalt? And consider that the
Thank you for your
stormwater basins
comments.
could hinder drainage through the whole schoolyard.
Thank you for your comments. We appreciate hearing from you. And if you have them
Okay.
in writing, you're welcome to submit them to our clerk, and we can then review them in more detail.
We hope that the school board will reconsider the issue of these trees.
Thank you for your comments. We appreciate you being here this evening.
Ms. Sundberg?
Thank you. I appreciate that.
Nope. All right. Ms. Trainer?
I have spoken with school board members and written many letters over the years, but always on behalf of collective interests. Tonight is different. I come to speak about my concern as a private individual. The presented playground design places the hardscaped amphitheater-like structure 18 feet from our backyard. The construction will affect nearly half the critical root zone of a very large maple on our property that shades our house from southern exposure. The county's tree inventory lists our maple as in good condition. It also lists it as preserved, which is clearly not the case based on my understanding of the blueprints. The tree will inevitably be injured by the extensive root damage. If it weakens, heavy winds will bring it down on our house. If it dies, we will face thousands of dollars of removal costs. The hazard and cost borne by my family will be directly the result of the proximity of the complex. Please understand that my family welcomes the new school. We advocated for it and have worked to explain it in our neighborhood. We applaud the building VMDO designed, but the current landscape proposal so close to our home will gravely damage both our property and our well-being. Just because Arlington can build within 18 feet of a property line doesn't mean it should. I hope you will look into this particular situation closely, allow a design adjustment, and be a good neighbor to us. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments.
All right, the next three speakers are Nancy Strinisty, John Kozar, and Angela Dickey.
Hi, I'm a Reed neighbor, and professionally, I'm a natural place-based design specialist and also the author of a recent book on the topic. Jurisdictions elsewhere, New England, California, Colorado, and even in DC, are embracing the idea that to support children's physical and mental health, a 21st century education must include direct daily access to nature. I commend the design team and APS on the portion of the process that focused on siting the building. The community had the opportunity to understand and have input. This process built trust and resulted in a good decision with a great deal of community buy-in. The grounds did not have that process for the community. There was not an opportunity for us to learn about the design program requirements, 2 soccer fields, a baseball field, manufactured play equipment, 1.5 baseball courts, universal access for wheelchairs, plus what we thought was a 750-seat amphitheater, or to weigh in on how those elements might be configured and whether within our request to maintain green space, we understood that you were taking that to mean we prioritized playing fields over tree canopy, which we don't. The value of tree coverage on schoolyards is being studied in a number of universities, and the results are stunning. In addition to a measurable improvement of the ability of kids with attention deficit disorder to focus, lower levels of anxiety, better emotional resilience, there's also a quantifiable improvement in academic test scores. One study looked at students in 387 schools and found a 13 percentage point difference in test scores, which correlated to the proportion of tree cover as distinct from
Thank-
other types of
Thank you for
green
your
space.
comments. We appreciate that.
Well,
You're welcome to
again-
submit your letter in writing, but you may have emailed us, I remember. Did you email
I
us?
did email
I remember
you a
reading your
longer, much
comments.
longer thing,
Okay,
yeah.
great. All right, so we have that. Thank you so much.
Good evening. My name is John Kozar. I have early-stage Parkinson's disease and macular degeneration, so I've asked my wife, Millie, to be here with me to help make this presentation. We have lived in our home for 45 years, and it backs up to the Reed School construction project. Our neighbor, Catherine Dowling, who was unable to be here tonight, asked us to submit her written statement, which I did, and asked us to add our additional comments. As you heard earlier, our neighborhood, both individually and as a group, participated in the planning process and the development process for this Reed School project. Most of us concentrated on the building plans and thought that the current footprint, which was already had an ADA compliant sidewalk, would remain the same. At recent meetings, plans were shown which indicated that many mature trees with large canopies would be removed with no replacement. This was planned to accommodate a new ADA compliant sidewalk. As Mrs. Dowling says in her letter, to remove these beautiful trees, mature trees, is wasteful, would denude the landscape and cause erosion. Westover just had a major flood in July, and now losing these trees could make the problem even worse. The same sentiment has been expressed by several floral experts in the Arlington area. The shade from these trees has provided thousands of hours of protection from the sun and has provided a great place for students and neighborhood kids to play. What we are asking here tonight is that the board direct the project designer to take another look at this ADA requirement versus the trees. I'm glad they're having the meeting on September 16th, and maybe we can have a better discussion with them and show them physically. Surely, as good a design team as they are, they can find a way to put an ADA sidewalk and keep the trees. Thank you very much.
Thank you for your comments, and you're welcome to submit your comments to us, and we can finish reading them if you were not able to complete them.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, members of the school board, for the opportunity to speak with you this evening. I'm Angela Dickey, an Arlington resident and a founding member of the Arlington Tree Action Group, or ATAG. For 3 years, ATAG has been fighting to save Arlington's rapidly diminishing tree canopy. 45% of Arlington County is now covered in impervious surface. That's pavement or built environments. And with all respect, APS is contributing to this problem. I'd like to remind you of one of your core values. I don't need to say this, but I will to show you that I know it. Stewardship. Manage our resources to honor the community's investments. Create safe, healthy, and environmentally sustainable learning environments. Support civic and community engagement. Serve current and future generations. So now I'd like to give you some statistics of which you may not be aware, but you should be aware since they've been done or are being done now in your name. Right now we're talking about the possible cutting of several mature trees at Reed School, which could result in destroying the existing tree canopy. Earlier this year at Stratford Middle School, you authorized 157 mature trees to be cut down, including several that were felled in order to create a temporary roadway for construction equipment. In 2018, you approved 157 mature trees in a public park to be cut down to create Thomas Jefferson Middle School. In 2015, your predecessors authorized the cutting of 152 mature trees at Abingdon Elementary School. In 2014, you authorized 94 mature trees to be cut down at Ashlawn Elementary, including 7 in a resource-protected
Thank you
area
for your
supposed
comments.
to be protected under the
If you could
Chesapeake.
submit your comments to us, we will continue to read them. Thank you.
I'm not finished, and I have several more seconds.
No, this is actually going into the positive. So what happens is as the clock goes down, it goes in minus, and when you're beep, then it goes back up. So you were 18 seconds over. And I appreciate your comments, and we're grateful that you came this evening. But we also have to run a meeting and provide time for all of our other agenda items. So if you could please submit those written comments to us, we would be so grateful. Thank you, and I appreciate the statistics. That was very helpful information.
All right, our final 3 speakers are Kirit Mukherjee, Mark Riley, and Nancy Schell. Kirit's not here? Okay, Mark Riley? Not here either. So Nancy Schell.
Get too emotional about this, but I am very emotional about it. I live right behind Reed School. Our property will be more impacted than anybody else's, probably. We are directly behind, as far as I can tell, 6 huge trees that are slated to come down. I remember the first time I saw the trees when I looked out the back of my house, and I've enjoyed the trees ever since, every year, every season. I have for years listened to children playing under the trees from the children's school, the kids playing in the snow. It just, when I think about it, just really upsets me. Still, there are people that come and have picnics under those trees. The kids are playing hide and seek. People come and sit on the benches in the shade of that lush canopy. It's just, there's nothing that you can compare to that. They say, well, we're going to be planting 4 or 5 trees to replace one of these large trees, but there's no comparison. Those large trees are probably close to 100 feet high. It just won't replace them. I really strongly urge you to consider the fate of these trees and incorporate this precious resource into a design plan. I don't think it's too late. I mean, I know it would be extra money and extra time and headache to try to design something that would incorporate that, but I think it's such an incredibly precious resource that we should try.
Thank you for your comments and for coming this evening. Thank you all for being here this evening and presenting your comments. Colleagues, do you have any comments or questions for Mr. Bergen and Mr. Knox? Ms. Van Dorn?
Thank you very much for your presentation. Thank you for the comments of the speakers who've come forward. I have a couple of questions, and I'm probably going to ask Mr. Chadwick this question, if that's okay, Ms. Johnson, through you. We always replace the trees per mandate of the county and per our use permits. Is that not correct?
That's correct, and in this case, we're replacing quite a few more. Mr. Knox has the numbers of how many more we're replacing than we're actually required to.
Okay, and we're being very careful with the selection of the trees, that they're appropriate to the site to, as quickly as possible, provide coverage, shade coverage, correct?
So there's a calculation that's done based on the size of the tree in terms of how many you have to replace. So by the Arlington code, we have to do 49 trees, and we're providing 82. And you can kind of see the breakdown on the screen there of what those are. So again, the trees along the walkway are willow oaks. These are the tulip poplars, and those 4 up there are the American elms, big canopy shade trees.
Yes. Thank you. And the red maples have somewhat of a shorter lifespan than the ones that you're putting in, don't they?
They do, and in fact, these willow oaks were red maples, and the urban forester said, you know, we need more biodiversity. Those are overplanted, and we want to see another tree. And so I thought it was a good permit suggestion.
Okay. Thank you. And Mr. Chadwick, again, in all of the construction projects at Jefferson, I was very involved with that one, Wakefield, all of them. We always have to replace the trees, as we did and as we are doing at Ham, correct?
Correct.
And it's always the formula based on what the county mandates,
Yes.
right?
Or greater.
And we maintain them so that if they have difficulty, we replace them, correct?
Yes, we've increased our maintenance contracts, and we have a summer program to keep them watered through the summer, particularly in the first few years when they're more vulnerable.
Okay, well, that was the experience that I had when we were doing this at Jefferson, and I'm keenly aware of the interaction with the arborists and what a great job they do at helping us make the right selections. So that's trees, and I understand. And the next topic I wanted to touch on is the universal design. You know, I'm a huge proponent of that. Universal design is a step beyond ADA, and all of our governments are moving to that. It allows anybody, if you have any mobility issue and other issues, to be able to access that site easily together with other people, so that people with perhaps a physical disability do not have to go to a different place or a different way on a different path to go onto the site. It allows somebody with full mobility and limited mobility to access it. And this one reminds me a lot of the one that we have now at Quincy Park, which I know I believe you had a chance to look at that one, which is full universal design. It's just a fabulous park that is accessed by all different ages, and it is a mecca for kids in Arlington of all different abilities. So I really commend you for doing this. I think I really appreciate the design and the thought, and I just want to applaud you for that and your progressiveness with that. And I really do hope we continue to do this in all of our locations and all of our playgrounds and all of our internal spaces. If we could eliminate stairs, I would love it. I would like kids with or without any kind of mobility support to be walking and being together with their friends and their teachers who are fully able. So thank you for that. I just wanted to comment on those two things. And I, having lived next to a construction project that was about 10 feet from my home for a solid year, I just want everybody to know who's contiguous to this site that I understand. But I also understand that we have a project to do, and it's going to be beautiful. And I think that you're being very careful to make sure that we aren't creating more interference for the neighbors. So thank you for that. But I am very sensitive to the issues that have been raised, but I understand that you've done a great job planning. So thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Van Dorn. Do we have other comments from my colleagues? Okay. Mr. Goldstein?
Thank you. Thank you for the excellent presentation. I've got a few questions on a few of the slides. I get slide 10 up there now. I think at the end of your briefing on this slide, Wick, you said something about the 5 trees. So we're down to 5 trees. Can you show me again where they are? Actually, maybe you should use this so folks in the room can see at the same time.
This one here is good to the left.
There's a pointer. There's a pointer on the
Okay, let me do it twice. How about that? Okay, so those 5 trees are, this is the 42-inch maple that the utility lines go right by the roots. That is a big, nice tree. This tree, number 2, is the mulberry, which is the one that's in poor to fair condition. That is, we had to excavate down for the playground area. And that leaves 3 trees, 2 red maples that are in excellent condition. They're kind of adolescent trees. One's 12 inches, one's 18 inches. And then the fifth one is the silver maple up at the top, which is a large tree. It's 54 inches. It's in good condition. And that's the one where, we impact 30% of the root zone of that tree. That's enough impact that it probably is going to have serious consequences. So the recommendation was to take it out. Those are very resilient trees. And so we have talked about, as I mentioned, maybe we wait and see. Now the trade-off there, if you wait and see, is that that's where we're putting 4 elm trees, American elm trees, big trees, and there's trees compete for canopy space. So let me do this for the audience. Okay.
Yeah, go ahead.
So that's the 42-inch maple where the utility lines go. This is the mulberry tree. These are the 2 red maples, and then the one at the top is the silver maple. Those are the 5 mature trees that are kind of in question here.
Okay, the 5 mature trees, because there are other trees indicated here in the pink.
That's correct.
And they are also being taken out, right?
Everything in pink is coming out.
Okay, so there's one on the half basketball court closest to you. There's, okay.
Correct. So those are much smaller trees. This is where the fire lane that's required has to go. This is the building footprint. We'll take this one out. These are some screen trees that will come out when we put those utilities in. They're being replaced. They'll be back almost exactly like they were. And then after that, there's one tree here that's a smaller tree, and then it's just that group of small trees that the urban forester thought needed to come out for thinning purposes.
Okay. All right. Thank you. That's very helpful. Let me ask, and you had also indicated a walkway to Washington Boulevard that was imposed during the use permit process, and I didn't really understand where that is.
It is right here. So currently there is a walkway that goes across the back of the site. It's a little steeper than what's allowed by ADA, but there is a way to circulate around the building on the back of the site. So, and the community also thought it was very important to hold on to that. That was one of the comments we got out of BLBC when we finished and got schematic design approval. So the problem is that accessibility is everywhere, right? So your parking lot also has to have a minimum or a maximum cross grade. So if someone gets out in a wheelchair and the wheelchair doesn't slide away, right? Or they're trying to get in or out. Well, those two are competing. Washington Boulevard is very steep. And so in order to get that to work, we had to pull back the parking a little bit to get the grading to work so we could get an accessible path through here. It's also worth mentioning as part of this project, we are adding an accessible path to the back of the library. Right now, you cannot get to the back of the library at all, except for stairs. So both of those pathways are being added.
And they're going to connect Washington Boulevard to what part of the site?
So you'll be able to come on a walkway here and walk alongside this parking lot to a sidewalk that runs behind the building and then connects over to the sidewalk that's been in question tonight around the playground.
Okay.
So you'll be able to move around the site on the back side or the west side all the way to its connection to up to 19th Street, or you'll be able to move through the site, through the middle of the site in an accessible way, and of course up to the front. We're even regrading carrying up some of the concrete that's there that doesn't have an accessible, it's more than 2% cross slope, so that every bit of this around the school is universally accessible.
I see. All right, thank you. That was helpful. Can you go to slide 14, please? So you had said that if the APS does engage in an additional power purchase agreement, then, do I have this right? This is a rendering of what the PV panels would look like in that event, but this is not what is currently being planned, absent an expansion of the PPA. Is that right?
That's correct. So your PPA provider is called SunTribe, and Reed is not one of the schools that's in the current contract. However, we did work with them, so this is a layout from them in anticipation that this school may be in a future contract. So we're trying to be smart and plan for how they would go on there in the future.
So this is pretty close to what it would look like if we did engage with the PPA at the Reed site.
This is exactly what it would look like.
And all of that gray is PV?
Yes.
On the upper and the lower building surfaces?
That's correct. So you're seeing a combination of PV on sloped standing seam, which is the dark color, there and there. And then you're seeing individual panels on racks on a membrane roof, a white membrane roof.
Okay, I see. Thank you. Can you go to slide 31, please? Oh, okay. I was thrown for a second, $42.62 for construction. Says I really have to commend you. That's quite a deal. I see in the paren it's really in millions. Oh, and the last bullet, staff recommends using the savings to increase project contingency. So can you go into a little detail what that means? Adding to the contingency line that's in the budget in case there's future costs that come up? Is that what you mean?
Sure. So the intent of the slide here was sort of report back on staff's efforts to respond to the school board's charge to save some money. And so we've identified some specific savings that we've been able to achieve. And so that would leave us with sort of two options, right? The option that we're suggesting is we sort of put those savings, keep that funding within the project so that we could use it to address something unexpected that could occur. The other option would be to decrease the allocated funding for the project. So it's important to note that the project, we always carry contingencies within the project, and in this case, we've increased some of the standard contingencies from past project as part of the lessons learned on some of our recent experiences. So we've allocated that, but again, our suggestion would to be increase those contingencies further with the funds that we've identified as those being saved up until this point.
And if we didn't add the savings to increase project contingency, then they would just be plucked out of that project. Total top line for the project would come down, and that money would go back to finance and spent somewhere else.
That could be an option.
Okay.
Yes. And I think it's important to note that we've on many projects we have funding sort of left over, so to speak, and in those cases that money at the closeout of the job is returned back to some fund, usually a reserve, a capital reserve. So in this case, we would sort of be suggesting, all right, holding on to those funds in a rainy day event, and then hoping that we don't end up spending them and they get returned ultimately back to the board after completion of the project.
Right, which we're not going to know for 2 more years.
Probably
2 more years plus.
2.5.
2.5, yeah.
To 3 years, yes, sir.
Okay, so I was interested to hear the plan for, I think it's a week from Monday, the 16th, to go back over the landscape plan, the tree plan. And you said you're going to use a certified arborist. Who is that? What?
So the Arlington County actually requires, as Mr. Knox mentioned, us to complete a tree inventory for the site. So the certified arborist is a person with an individual training and specific requirements that works as part of VNBO's team. So in this case, that individual works for the civil engineering firm. And so that is the entity that sort of that documents the inventory, because the inventory and the recommendations of the arborist is what county staff respond to as part of our permit approval. So for instance, we do have an approved civil engineering plan from the county, and as part of that review process, the county staff sort of evaluated our recommendations and made comments to suggestions.
Mr. Goldside, I apologize. How many more questions do you have? I want to give all the board members opportunities to respond, and we can come back to you as well if needed.
I have 1, 2, 3 questions.
Okay.
Yeah.
So why don't you wrap this one up, and then I'm going to move to our other board members, and I'll come back to you.
So this September 16th meeting is really something that's been added to the project schedule, the BLPC schedule or something like that.
That's correct. So a requirement of our use permit is to host a pre-construction meeting. So we fulfilled that requirement last week when we had a public meeting last Wednesday to discuss the project. As part of that feedback, we received a lot of questions at that session and since in email form about the trees and whether there could be opportunities to modify the tree removal. So this is our effort to respond to the community's concerns and comments. It's something that we would not be doing in our normal course of action. So we've asked the civil engineer to go back out to the site to tag the trees, to survey certain site elements for the purposes of facilitating this discussion.
And what's that going to cost?
I don't have the specific value, but it's a fairly modest cost.
It's going to cost something, right? I mean, we're using...
It's not free, yes.
Yeah, it's not free. All right, I would really like to be able to finish these last 2 questions, but if you insist, then I'll wait until...
I am going to insist. When I went to the chair training, they said that we should give everyone a round of questions and then come back for a second round. This also allows a little bit of back and forth and allows people to process the answers to your questions and get a little bit of a different, I think, energy from different board members and then come back. So, but thank you for asking if you could continue. Dr. Cannon.
All right, thank you very much. Mr. Knox, it's good to see you.
Nice
and
to
congratulations again on Fleet. I haven't seen it yet with the kiddos, but I'm sure it's really, what was the quote about the live buildings coming alive? Mr. Baumann, thank you for coming and for sharing also Mr. Schroll's comments, and thank you to the community too for coming out and staying late. Really appreciate hearing from everyone. I do have a few questions, so we'll sort of figure out how to balance this. First about some of the things speakers mentioned, and then also about money. So a couple things. Mr. Knox, when we went through the BLPC process for Fleet, there was a lot of talk about the playground, in fact, and there was a lot of change in your design based on community's feedback about the playground. Was the outdoor space, what we're talking about, the landscaping, at what point was that introduced in this process? Did the BLPC see the landscaping that we're actually kind of talking about tonight?
Absolutely, and I'm sure you know from your own experience that almost the entire BLPC and PFRC process is about site design.
Right.
Very little of it's about architecture. It's about open space, it's about parking, it's about transportation and playground stuff. So that was front and center of every meeting. And we had rendered colored site plans for all 6 of the schemes that we originally proposed.
So things like the outdoor classroom, and I know the tree removal is part of it, but the outdoor classroom, for example, were in those schematic design? Or
Absolutely.
It was part of the PowerPoints.
Absolutely.
That the community was seeing
Right.
throughout. Okay. And I did want to ask about the speaker who was concerned about a tree, I think, in her yard. Was that something that you were aware of, and is it something?
It is, and we have communicated some about that. I looked at the tree and the impact, so from what I can tell, it looks like about 15, maybe 20% of the root zone will be impacted, but it won't be impacted by any excavation. We are adding a little bit of soil, and it's about 12 inches at max as that pathway comes around. So as I told her, I think that the tree's going to be just fine. The bigger concern is construction itself. And so we're going to take some extra precautions to make sure we have fencing and things around that tree. And there shouldn't be much of a need to do heavy construction there. So I think it'd be pretty easy to take some extra care and make sure that thing's going to be okay.
So there's maybe a professional disagreement and maybe that can be discussed a bit at the meeting on the 16th.
Yes.
with the arborist. That would be, I think, something that would be good to do.
Yes, and
to follow up on that.
And her husband, Mike, was on the BLPC.
Yeah.
Was a great productive member, and I'm fairly certain it was Mike's suggestion to, because we had the basketball courts there, to take the basketball courts and move them closer and put the playground further out, which overall is a good thing. It's less impermeable surface closer to them and less retaining walls, and is a better solution for everybody.
So again, you're confirming there was a lot of discussion at the BLPC
Absolutely.
about
Absolutely.
the placement of these outdoor amenities that are now being kind of being discussed again.
Absolutely.
On the money front, and I do think it's important for us to every now and then remind the community that we did a construction cost audit, and which really demonstrated that the costs of our schools are similar to our neighboring districts. The things that make our schools more expensive are the community process itself. We have a lot of those BLPC, PFRC meetings. That takes money. Mr. Knox comes. We pay for professional time and all of that. We have to accommodate the county permit requirements, which are higher than in some districts. And then another one is that our projects generally provide county amenities in addition to just being a school. So sometimes it's an apples and oranges comparison. We're building schools that the community uses in a variety of ways. So I just wanted to remind everyone of that we've done a careful study of that. We do a lot with our schools. We provide community amenities. And I would assume, and I don't know if you want to comment on this, that this project in fact has amenities that we expect the community to be community benefits, not just school benefits.
Yes, I would definitely agree with that statement, and I think that Mr. Baumann referenced part of the charge of the PFRC on that group is sort of charged with high civic architecture. So it's something we take seriously, and something that Mr. Knox has described in great detail of how we're trying to take existing conditions and improve them on a lot of site improvements that would be certainly available to all members of the community. And then in addition to that, we have the wonderful spaces within the building as well, like the cafeteria and the gymnasium, that will be remarkable community assets.
Great. And I just want to confirm one thing about the finances. Okay, yeah, this is, just want to confirm the numbers, because I think you said that there are $4 million that we need to take from reserves on top of the $2.5 million, 2.75 that we need to contribute to the joint fund.
That's correct.
So when assuming we approve this coming forward, that's what we're going to be approving, right? That $6.75 million coming from our capital reserves at the point of our vote later this month?
It's actually a wonderful question. I would need to check on the disposition of that $4 million. It may already be assigned to the project.
I would, and I know Ms. Peterson's not here, who would probably summarize that pretty well for us. It would be helpful to get that detail, and also it's always nice to check our balance on our capital reserve
We'll
fund.
check with Ms. Peterson as to exactly what needs to be done. And bring that to you when we bring it for action.
Certainly, as in the PowerPoint presentation, and I think I'd like to see it a little before that if we can get it to the school board sometime before a vote. Thank you.
Certainly.
Thank you, Dr. Kennan. Ms. O'Grady?
Thank you, Chair Talento, and I'll try to consolidate my questions. I'm going to try my best, but
We're going to second round, but I'm
Okay.
just trying to make sure that we're all getting a chance to speak and then come back around so it's a discussion.
I think that's a great plan, and I appreciate that.
Okay,
Thank you.
you.
I just want to say, as the BLPC liaison, I was at the last meeting, and I do acknowledge that several members of the community were very concerned about the trees. Following the meeting, I did walk up the hill in my heels and to take a look at the trees, and I appreciated the opportunity to do that with the community, and I understand why they're concerned about the trees. Some of those trees are very lovely, and I'm very happy to hear that we're going to have a meeting on the 16th at 6:30 p.m. Monday the 16th to have a conversation with the community about that. I do, having been at many of those meetings, I do know that we've had some discussion about how the playground would be situated. Sometimes in the excitement of discussing the playground amenities, everyone doesn't pay attention to the trees, but I think in the end, the design is a great design. I do agree that there's a lot of trade-offs. So there have been some suggestions of redesigning the playground, and that there's a lot that goes into the playground. It's the design of where things are. There's some bioretention systems. There's the system underneath that has to be engineered. If things were to be moved around, what would the impact be on timing and potential cost?
I'll sort of answer that indirectly and then maybe come back to it. I think that Mr. Bauman's remarks captured it very well, that if there are sort of changes or revisions to the design that we would pursue now, would likely either upset or cause other conflicts that we can't sort of predict or intend. I do know that as I mentioned in the presentation, all these team members have just completed they were both part of the Fleet project and the Heights project. And the value of us starting construction on time, as we intend in the last week of September, is really critical for us because that allows us to get as much work in place before the weather turns for the winter. Because a lot of the initial activities are going to be around the site work and the things that we would rather not do in the dead of winter. So even a delay by a few days could impact the overall project schedule by weeks, and it's something that certainly I would not support or endorse.
Thank you. There was some concern that the hill has a lot of canopy now, and where the trees are going to be planted and replaced may not eventually replace the canopy in the way that it was. What will the experience be like, do you think, if the trees are where they are, and if the community has a conversation with the arborist on the 16th, and they would like to see the trees placed in different places on the hill? Is that something that could be considered, or are the trees kind of stuck where they are proposed to be planted?
I think it's really important to note what it takes to get to today, right? The draft use permit documents were sent to the county in August of 2018. We got final approval today. So to redo the site plan changes landscape approval, there's state approval for stormwater, the civil engineering plan has to be reapproved. Those things, those two, the site and the landscape and the civil took 5 months, and those have to be approved before we can get the whole building approved. So it really sets up a lot of potential problems. Just because of the process is what it is. It takes quite a while to get there.
Thank you very much, Mr. Knox. I don't know if everyone understands all the time frame and all the different hurdles we may have to go through if we move forward and make changes. So I appreciate you expressing that. And then the last question I have, because Dr. Kinnan asked a few questions I was interested in getting answers to, is about some playground equipment. Because at the last meeting, I guess it was mentioned that some of the playground equipment is going to be saved, and maybe some of the current equipment is going to be moved during the construction. I'm just trying to figure out, where is that playground equipment being moved to on a temporary basis? Because it was said that there would not be any access to the APS site, and I didn't know if you're moving it somewhere else where the kids could be playing with it during construction, or if it's just going to be kind of stored within the APS site.
So, very good question. So, as you know, the Reed School was used for the Children's School and Integration Station, and so the play equipment located adjacent to that facility is for younger children. And so our proposal is to relocate the equipment sort of adjacent to the play court, this equipment right there, and relocate it into the sort of the hillside under the canopy. So there's really, that will become the permanent lower elementary play area for the project. but it will be within the construction zone, and so that area will not be accessible to the public until the facility opens in '21.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ms. O'Grady. Ms. Van Doren, do you have any additional comments or questions? Mr. Goldstein, you have a couple additional questions?
Yeah, thank you. I think I missed the end of that because I was going to ask you to go to this slide. And you had said that the APS site is going to be inaccessible for the 2 years of the construction, starting very soon. And what part of the existing site plan is the APS site?
Okay, so basically everything on that screen.
So
With the exception of this corner.
Okay.
That's
county.
County property.
Okay.
So that will remain open and available to folks throughout construction. And then access to the library, Westover Library, will be open. So there will be, this front plaza will be unobscured, and there will be sort of some protected exits on the backside of the building. But aside from that, everything along the perimeter of the site will have a fence, a safety fence separating.
There's library parking as well.
Oh, yes, thank you. Thank you. There will, during construction, there will be at least 33 parking spaces available for library patrons. And that that parking may shift throughout construction, but it will always be the same, at least the same number of spaces, and it will always be off-street, so somewhere on the site.
So that almost rectangle on the right-hand side, the corner of, I think it's 18th and what is it? Is it Lexington?
Lexington?
Yeah, so that's county property, that's still going to be accessible. But everything else next to it is APS property. All the rest of those fields and play courts and everything else is
Yes, sir.
APS property.
Yes, sir. And this was just to expand a little bit on that decision, this was a result, sort of a lesson learned from the Heights project, where that constricted site made it very challenging to construct. And so what we're also able to achieve on this site is that 100% of the contractor parking will be located on our site. So we don't have to pay a lease somewhere else for it. It'll all be on the site, and we've committed to giving the contractor the entire site to sort of allow their operations to be much more efficient.
Okay, thank you. And my last question is, one of the speakers brought up the recent Westover flooding. And does anybody have an opinion on what the impact of this site was on that flooding?
Are you asking how this site contributed to that event?
Yeah. Do we know?
I don't know how to answer that.
All right, I mean, there's a significant grade there on the hillside, right?
So the site, so right now, the water that comes off the roofs of the buildings that you have now, they are slowed down by a couple of underground tanks that are underneath this sidewalk right here. That's really just dealing with the impact of the impervious surface caused by that building footprint. Other than that, there is no other treatment on this site, and this site is a bowl that comes down to the middle of the site, and all the properties around it send water down to it. And so all of the bioretention gardens that we're talking about that are in the middle of the site are to address that problem. And we want to do whatever we can to pick up all that water that's coming in and retain it, clean it, and slowly release it.
And that's what the stormwater plan focuses on.
Absolutely.
Mm-hmm. Which I'm presuming will do a better job than what we have currently.
Absolutely will, absolutely. We're required to have less water leaving the site than the existing conditions, and we've gone beyond that by quite a bit. So currently your building did something to mitigate that, but your site didn't do anything. So any water that was running onto the site or running off the site just kept going.
Okay, thank you very much.
I'll just add one final comment. The project is fairly new. I think 10, 11 years it was completed, but in the time since that's passed, the stormwater requirements have exponentially increased. So we are required to do far more now as part of our project than we were even 10 years ago.
Good, thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Goldstein. Dr. Kennan, do you have any additional questions or comments? Ms. O'Grady?
Just one small thing, Ms. Dillinto. I just wanted to say, unfortunately, I will be at open office hours on the 16th, so I won't be able to attend, but I'm looking forward to you all having the conversation without me. I'm sorry I would be there if I were not otherwise detained. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. O'Grady. Mr. Bergen, Mr. Knox, I think my colleagues have answered all the questions that I had as well. So thank you so much for being here this evening and for the detailed presentation and addressing so many of the concerns that we have heard. We are grateful for the time. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for the attention.
Thanks very much.
This item will come back for action at our next meeting because I know we're bringing forth some additional information per board members' questions. I expect it to be on our agenda as an action item. Okay. Our final information item is proposed revisions to 4 school board policies. And as a member of the policy subcommittee, I will be presenting the item. Thank you, Ms. Elliott, for getting me the clicker. I appreciate that. So we are proposing revisions to 4 policies. The proposed changes to the policies align the policies to current APS practices and related policies, ensure policies reference and align with the Code of Virginia. And all of these policies had very minor adjustments to clarify content, with the exception of the D-2.32 Joint County Board and School Board activities. These are the 4 policies that we're presenting for with revisions. On board docs, you can see the clean and the marked up versions. And the reason the Joint County Board and School Board activities is changed is because it did not change more significantly than the others. It did not reflect current practices. And I think the last time that it was adopted was in 2007. So it was under a different board and a different county board. And it was really detailed and really did not encompass all the collaboration that we do now, as well as this new revision is more reflective of the school board's intent and expectation in collaboration with the county board. So colleagues, do you have any questions or comments on this information item? Great. So I do expect this information item to come back to our school board meeting on the 19th for action on our consent item. We are now at new business. Board members, is there any new business? Hearing none, this meeting is adjourned. Have a great night.